DisJointed Production.
Hey, what's shaking, everybody? Hey, guess what? I have another guest again. Welcome to the DisJointed Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Germain. This week, we are joined by Melanie and Anton. Welcome back to the show. It's nice to have you here again. It's always great. I'm always excited every time, even if there's like a text or a message. It's not like I'm being super fanboy and everything. But it's really weird. I remember the first conversation that we actually had, and I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. From the first time I saw you, I never thought I'd actually be talking to you. And it's really, really cool that you're nice enough to do these podcasts and stuff. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. And it's weird because every now and then, there was this one comic, I won't mention his name because I think he just got married and I don't know what kind of wife he has, so she might not react well, but I'm like, yeah, because I mentioned in my act, I'm like, so this is a weird thing. I had a chance to actually speak with, an adult film star from the 90s, and I mentioned your name, and the dude's face just lit up, and then he just downloaded the episode immediately, and I was like, wow, interesting. You had a very strong effect on a lot of guys, or a lot of people, I would say, yeah, it was just really, really weird. So every now and then, like your episodes are still some of my highest rated. Not that I have like super huge numbers and stuff on this podcast, I don't, but it's really, really interesting because it's like, I'll check and see like, all right, apparently a bunch of people in Africa really, really dug Melanie's episode. And then like the next week it'll be the Philippines, and then it kind of keeps traveling over the world and stuff. So, but yeah, it's a bizarre thing. By the way, for folks who don't know, is it okay if I mention this, or so the reason when I say from work in the 90s is because Melanie was, for a brief, short period of time and stuff, you were in the adult movie industry for like, it was like a year or something, you said, right? It wasn't like...
Technically, I did my first photo spread, came out in 90, and I did my last video, I want to say it was 98.
Oh, okay.
So almost a decade.
Oh, wow. For some reason, it always seems, because there's only like 5 videos that you could find online for the most part.
I didn't work full time. It wasn't even really part time. It was pretty infrequent.
Right. I could imagine that, where it's not like everybody's constantly doing film and stuff or plays and everything. It's probably the same thing involved in that. So, but I always think one of the reasons why I enjoy our conversation so much is because that's such a unique thing that you have done, and such a unique person to do it. And that's one of the reasons. It's like, kind of like, why do I like talking to the people that I like talking to? Because it's like, I like people who are really unique and have some really interesting stories. It's not like I can go to anybody and be like, so tell me about what you do in the 90s and stuff. How much adult film work? And then like, what are you talking about? Get away from me, And I'm like, no, I wanted to talk to somebody interesting, whatever, fine. But either way, if you guys want to hear a lot about the conversation, like I would say the first one we did was more about the business aspect of that industry. The second one we actually started talking about some things that were a little bit racier. So I'm not exactly sure how this particular episode is going to go. But I actually I wrote down some questions. So I want to get any questions about the adult film industry out of the way at the top. Is that all right? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So I don't know how much stuff that you look at when you get on your phone or your tablet or whatnot, but it used to be, there was, I would say in the 90s, how many BBW, or what I mean, like as far as like women with curves, there were in the adult film industry. I think there was less than 5 that I can remember seeing. There wasn't a lot of videos and stuff, and yours was one of the very few that was actually, it was like any other any other porn, because there were some of them were like, all right, here's a dude who weighs 98 pounds and he's going to have sex with this woman who weighs 500. All right, go, and it was always kind of like a freak show thing. It wasn't like like a mainstream thing. And now I would say it's definitely, it's more rare. Maybe it's just because of my algorithm or whatever, but it's more rare to see somebody who is actually, skinny, that comes up on my thing, because everything else is kind of like, all right, Dave, we know what you like. I'm like, hey, I might be into something else. Shut up, But what do you think, as far as like how the industry has changed and stuff, and the people who are getting involved in it? How do you feel about? I mean, whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't matter. What do you think about the industry as it is today?
Oh, you're pulling out the big ones first, aren't you?
Like I said, I'm trying to get these out of the way because I don't want to spend the whole,
Well, I have mixed feelings.
Sure.
I mean, I have really mixed feelings.
So do I.
am absolutely thrilled that more women of a variety of body sizes and body types are able to get in and get involved, however they choose to do it, whether it's with mainstream production companies or whether they're doing their own thing. And that's where I'm really excited is watching a lot of these women in their 20s and 30s, like building their own brand and building they're actually their own business. They're the owners of their name, their image, their content, and they market that how they see fit. That wasn't even a thing in the 90s, at least that I knew of. I mean, granted, there were so few of us. So it wasn't even a thing. So I'm thrilled about that. I'm always not happy when I see fat phobia come up, and actually anything, racism, sexism, homophobia, fat phobia, anything like that come up in response to any performer. And I don't know if it's just the advent of social media that there just seems to be an uptick in the past few years of that. I've been seeing more and more of that. And that could also be my algorithm because it comes across. Obviously they can tell that I've been reading it. So I spent more time on it than maybe I spent on something else. So that's what they're showing me. But that's disturbing because my whole thing is, not everybody's going to like everything.
Right.
And my whole thing is, hey, if you're not into, BBWs, if you're not into fat women, that's fine.
Yeah.
Don't make fun of them. Keep scrolling. Go look for what you're interested in. You don't need to denigrate or put down another person because they're not exactly what you're looking for. Go find what you're looking for.
That's such a weird thing that people do. And I've seen it's strange. I would agree that it did kind of get. Well, I still think humanity, we're still getting used to this new technology of social media. And I think a lot of people are starting to figure out that maybe it wasn't the best thing as what we thought it was going to be. So, okay, so I know people have a lot of different views about Elon Musk buying Twitter, right? So I have a lot of friends who are definitely on the liberal side. I consider myself more on the liberal side. They probably wouldn't consider me that anymore, but I'm like a Gen X liberal. You know what I mean? So I'm like, what does that mean? It means I'm really cynical and I'm kind of an asshole about it. So that's how it is. But it's kind of like, I saw a lot of people, some people brought up some interesting points about Elon and how they weren't really for it, but I saw a lot of people crying and screaming. I'm like, yeah, this is why we don't like safe spaces, because now that you don't have your safe space, now you guys are freaking out and you want to freaking run someplace else. Like you're not strong if that's all it takes for you to break. And that was just kind of like, that's a cynical opinion of it. But I see a lot of people talking about leaving, but they're still on there and they're still posting on it. And I actually think it's kind of interesting Now, what I found out about social media is that I don't put my personal thoughts on social media. If I really wanted to share them, I have my own website, DisJointedPod.com. I have a blog section. So if you really, really, really wanted to see any of my stuff, you could read it and see what it is I think about whatever particular topic and stuff. But you have to actually go and look for it. I never wanted to put it as part of an algorithm that it's kind of like I know on Facebook, if it's my friends who are watching it and stuff, they know me. So even if something gets misinterpreted, they could be like, what are you talking about this? I'm like, oh shit, that's not what I meant to say. That's one thing. But if it's being used to, like, for some reason, my particular point of view or the exact type of things, let's say it pisses you off, and it just keeps showing up in your feed, and you're like, fuck this guy. You know, like, what kind of asshole? So I'm like, I didn't want it to be a part of that. I've seen a lot of comics that haven't realized that Twitter is not their friend. You know what I mean? Because it's like the comments and stuff that, like, I have to admit, I'm always kind of interested because I rarely ever get any comments. Okay. But I've seen comics that once they kind of find their audience on Twitter, on social media, they're now beholden to that particular audience. So,
Yeah.
like, one of my favorite comics, and I even freaking hate to even mention that Patton Oswalt is one of my favorite comics.
Oh, I like him.
I do too. But he's somebody else I think that really, really kind of leaned into his own audience because he has, like, he could sell out wherever he wants to go for the most part. You know what I mean? Like, he's a great comic. His last special, even though I didn't necessarily like all the jokes, I would say that was more the classic style that Patton Oswalt had been known for. And it was an amazing special. Even if there's a topic I don't agree with, but I still laugh at it, I'm like, that's pretty good. That's why I love that guy. But then there's other things where it's like he takes a picture with a friend of his, with Chappelle, and then his audience gets really pissed off, and then he has to apologize for knowing somebody for like 20 or 30 years. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's weird. Now, granted, I'm not in his position. I don't know what's at stake. I have way less to lose than that guy does. But it's still like I would see things like this where it's kind of like people, like, I don't know. It's kind of craziness. But I'm, shit, where was I?
I take so much of that with a grain of salt, though. Right. I mean, because each of these individuals that we'll use the bucket term famous, mm-hmm. for lack of better verbiage. They are their brand.
Yeah.
We talked about branding before. They are their brand, and you're right. They kind of have to be swayed a bit by their audience, so to speak. And, you know, before social media, you would find if your joke didn't go over well in, you know, Salt Lake City, mm-hmm. but it went over well in London, then you know that you're going to have to change it up for your Salt Lake City market. Mm-hmm. With social media now, everything is so public that your audience pretty much becomes everybody who comes across your feed. Managing or juggling, I mean, that's got to be exhausting. I'm hoping that they have managers that are, you know, have their best interests at heart,
right,
that are letting them know what they need to do in order to maximize happiness, for, you know, lack of a better term.
I think
make the majority happy. And that sucks in some ways, though, because especially for people who are like comedians, I mean, they don't tell jokes that other people have, generally speaking. They don't, if they're really good comedians, they don't tell jokes other people have written necessarily, unless they have a specific writer. Yeah. You know, they're not doing George Carlin's skit. Yeah. They're doing their own material. So it's deeply personal.
Mm-hmm. It should be anyways.
If they're writing their own content, it's deeply personal to them. And I could see it being difficult to try and take criticism and change it up. And then, you know, you have these relationships with people and you've had them for so long. And then that person missteps, which falls back on you because there was that photo 20 years ago, mm-hmm. That you shared because you weren't thinking that this individual was going to do something irresponsible. And now you have to backpedal. And there's that cynical Gen X part of me that says, screw it.
Mm-hmm. And
people are people and just meet them where they're at. And just, you know, I'm friends with this guy. Yeah, he may have done some stupid stuff. Yeah. That doesn't mean that I'm going to hate him now. That doesn't mean this. And then the other part of me is like, yeah, you still got to get paid.
Yeah. Well, you know, the weird thing is about, I guess the reason why it was a kind of, with comics, it's really weird. Like, I mean, it's not like the comics is all one solid community, because it totally isn't. there's the comics that want to go along to get along, and then there's other comics who are like, no, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing no matter what. And then, there's a lot of folks in between, like it's just like anything. Like, the thing is like once you kind of, as a comic, once you have enough, or get, from what I understand, have good enough relationships with clubs and club owners, or let's say with theaters and stuff, and you start to develop an audience and stuff, that you're pretty much independent. You don't need a studio's permission or an executive's permission to do whatever it is you want to do. As long as they keep buying tickets, you're kind of independent. I mean, that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons why I guess some folks, they have a love-hate relationship with certain stand-up comedians, because no matter what you do, you can't cancel them. You can't.
Yeah.
You're not, even no matter how much you hate him, you don't have enough money and time and effort to go around the country and try to go to every club, because guess what? If there's like more than one club in a particular town, not even a city, just a town, and you get that one club to, let's say, to not hire that comedian, the other club is going to snatch him up real quick. Or
Yep.
there's going to be a restaurant or a bar that says, yeah, I'll take 300 people to come in here and I'll buy drinks and stuff. Yeah, sure, whatever. I'll find a way to do it. So it's kind of like, it gets kind of crazy when it comes, like, with actors, you could do that because all you got to do is talk to just the studios, and the studios say, like, hey, we don't want to have this, we don't want the smoke, get rid of this person. But yeah, comics was a different thing. But I think the smarter comics, one is that they don't post jokes or anything like that, or the material. They're like, let's save that material for people who are going to buy tickets to a show. You know what I mean? Or if they put up a sketch of their set, it's like maybe 10 seconds of it. It's nothing, if it's not on a whole YouTube special or whatever. And the other guys, like Rogan always talks about this. He's like, I don't read comments. Even if they're good or bad, I don't read them because I don't want to get sucked into it. Because he's an obsessive person. He knows that, like, if I get sucked into this, it's going to be very difficult for me to get out. So therefore, he just, like, he'll post something and then he doesn't look at it ever again. And I'm like, oh.
That's smart.
Yeah. And I was like, huh. I mean, granted, I'm not even at that point where anybody gives a shit, but I look forward to ignoring every comment that I get at some point when I get to that point, let's see. So, okay, here's another question I will preface this by an observation I had of your work that I said on a previous podcast, is that with the films that you did and the scenes that you did, you generally seemed like you enjoyed being there. That is not the same thing that I could always tell with, like, when I look at, like, erotic work on the internet, because sometimes it's kind of like, does this girl even want to be doing what she's doing right now? Because it doesn't seem like it, and I feel really bad watching this. So, like, from a creative point of view, what do you think, as far as, like, the industry, what it does well and what it could use some more work on?
Well, to be honest, I haven't watched modern professional porn in a while.
I don't think that exists anymore. It's all stuff from the community.
Yeah, I'm watching Twitter clips and stuff like that more than anything else. I'm trying to think of when the last time I actually saw. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I really don't know. From what I've seen on, like, clips on Twitter that are like 2 minutes long.
Right.
A lot of stuff is being done amateur.
Yeah.
And I'm a visual person. I want to see good quality camera work.
Yeah.
And I want to see production value.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I like the story as well that goes along with it. I've always been big on the porn that was, like the spoof of like a television show, and Gilligan's Byland or something, something like that. The stories that were even the really cheesy, really thin, pretext of a story, I kind of enjoyed it. Now, granted, if all I want to do is get off, then it really doesn't matter. But a lot of what I'm seeing are actual couples, so they're actually into each other. But then there's a lot where it seems like she's just there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like, God, you could pretty much stick it in anywhere, I don't get it, so to speak.
You guys can't see this, but because this is just an audio thing, but there's a lot of videos where I just see the girl with like a really kind of like disinterested look on her face, and she's like, yeah, no, this is really hot. Okay. Are you done yet? And she kind of has that look on her face while she's like, cranking off two other guys, and it's kind of like, you would think that like this is something you'd have to be hyper invested in and pay attention to whatever thing that's going on, but she's kind of disconnected, and it's weird and
it's like she's doing her taxes in her head.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like doing, I'm like, let's see, I got to go pick up the kids later, and not in my hair, and let's see,
not in my eyes, not in my ears,
right?
Well, and in a lot of these, I'm finding, I don't know who these men are. We never see their faces.
Yeah.
Now, I get how that could be interesting for men because then they can insert themselves into that position.
Yeah, we do that anyways,
Yeah, but I'm like, you guys have been doing that all along, so to speak. Just like, I would do it as well. I would insert myself into someone's position, and it's not always the woman's. So, right. It's just weird, though. It's like, I see her face. I know what she looks like. How come I don't know what these guys look like?
Right. Or let's see, there's the standard close-up shot of just the guy's junk as he's having sex with his lady or whatever. And that's the only thing that this guy, I'm like, let's say this might be a video where audio-wise, the girl is having a really, really great time, but he's never going to, I just want everybody to look at my dick. Look how awesome this is. And I'm like, well, now this is why you need another cameraman, you idiot. Because people don't give a shit about you. What they want to know is they want to know about what her experience is. That's generally the reason why I think a lot of guys, they want to see something that's better than the sex that they usually have. You know what I mean?
True.
And
one of the things that I do like about some of the amateur stuff, though, is that a lot of it is more realistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like a lot of porn, a lot of professionally produced porn. The sex isn't always realistic. She's screaming and yelling like she's having the best orgasm of her life, but you are nowhere near any of the spots that are going to get her there.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, and so then, unfortunately, young men and young ladies may watch porn before they're quite ready for it, and they seem to think that that is what sex is supposed to be.
I could attest to that. There was two. Oh my gosh, I got to tell my mom not to listen to this episode. She would have like about by now. She would have been like, okay, never mind, Mijo, because she didn't listen to the other two episodes. I'm like, because I put a warning on there. I'm like, this is going to be talking about a lot of sexy stuff on this thing, just to let you know. So 90s porn, the way that most guys would finish, way back in the day, guys, back in 90s porn, was usually on a girl's back. All right. So I thought that's just what you do. And I ran into a gal that was really, really, really upset that I did that. And I was like, I saw it in a movie. That's what I thought that you were supposed to do. Some girls were into it. Some girls really, really weren't. All right. So, but comparatively speaking, I can tell you this to all the young men today, and I think this might actually turn into a bit. So thank you so much for this, Mel. There's not every girl is into anal on the first date. All right. As a matter of fact, I would say most of them aren't. So I know you've seen this in porn, that this is kind of the natural thing. What happens is that when you have sex, like, well, I have to freaking put whatever I can of me into whatever part of her. I'm like, no, not necessarily. I mean, granted, there are some freaks out there, but for the most part, like, no, you can't do that. You know what I mean? Or, like when you see a guy that's like really, really rough, like, you know, with a vagina and stuff. And I'm like, once again, most girls aren't really going to dig that. Like, and I would hate to be 13 years old and think like that's what it is. So, I don't know if there's an answer for that, because you're not going to stop porn. And you're not going to stop.
There is an answer for that. And that's, oh God, here. Would you like to hold my soapbox for me while I climb on it?
Sure.
And it's comprehensive sex education. Kids need to know about their own bodies. They need to know what the parts are, what parts they have, what parts the other sex has, what parts may or may not be present, because we have people who are intersexed as well. They're at some point, and it's probably high school, which may be too late for some kids, but things like pleasure need to be talked about. Beyond safe sex, beyond contraception, beyond this is how a baby is made, or this is how a baby isn't made. Things like consent and pleasure, those things need to be talked about. And I know we never had any of those discussions in my 10th grade sex ed biology class.
Nope, they didn't even mention
how to not get pregnant, how to not get a disease.
Right. They just try to scare you with everything, or not having sex, basically. Like, by the way, this is AIDS, and this is also all these other STDs and stuff that you're definitely going to get if you have sex before marriage. I'm like, what? It was intense. I think a lot. I mean, granted, like the sex talk that I had from my dad was this: if you date a girl long enough, eventually you're gonna end up screwing her. Just make sure you wear a rubber. That was it.
Yeah, I didn't. I got something. Basically, it was like, my mom found out I wasn't a virgin anymore. Do you need to go on birth control? Okay. And then that was it. Yeah. It was the whole discussion.
The discussion that I wish that I would have had, and say, all right, Dave, there's a couple things about our family that are really, really, that are going to be different from other people. I'm not going to say which one of us between your mother and I, but one of us is fucking crazy good in the sack. And what comes with that is a lot of weird other shit that goes along with, like, as far as mental stability and everything. So you're going to think that every girl, like especially up until like your mid 20s, early 30s, before your body stops producing so much testosterone, you're going to assume that the last girl you had sex with is going to be the last girl that you're ever going to have sex with, and you're going to go fucking nuts and start obsessing over a bunch of different things. This is a family trait which I don't want you to do. I need you to be careful for this. And like, if it starts feeling this way, come and talk to me and we'll work this out. But I don't want you to freaking walk around with a bunch of, crazy ideas of what you think a relationship should or shouldn't be. And there's a lot of other things that I wish that I could have learned. But granted, like, my dad passed away when I was 12, right? So even if he had survived, I don't know if he would have been capable of having those conversations with anybody, because he was born in 1938. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I get it.
Like those generations. Like, I had a bit in my act where I'm like, I know I make a lot of jokes about the millennials and the Gen Zs and stuff, and it's not because I hate you guys. I don't. It's just I'm jealous, because your parents told you that they loved you. And that's not something that older generations did, especially dads. I hope you know that. That is a new thing. No generation before us ever said, hey, son, you know what? I just want to tell you I'm proud of you and I love you. And you're like, if you did that, you're like, what's going on? Or you ask your dad, like, Dad,
are you and Mom getting a divorce?
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on?
You tell your dad that you love him, and he's like, hey, quiet down. Your mother already thinks that you're probably going to be gay, all right? She doesn't need to hear that shit. And you're like, what? I just want to tell you that I appreciate everything. Come on. I can hear her crying already. Stop it, But it's just different things. But actually my cousin recommended, because he has a lot of, he's got kids and stuff like that, so he has a different point of view on the youth than I do, because I don't have any kids, or Jenny and I don't. And it's just kind of weird. He's like, you might want to put something in there that, like, actually, because let them know that you don't hate them. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, you know what? Here's something good. And that one seems to be working pretty well. But yeah, it's a weird thing. Here's another question that I had for you. Okay, because this was a bit that I was working on, and it just happened to be at this bar where everybody was talking about weird, sexy stuff. So I'm like, all right, if you guys want to be open and honest about this, let me talk to you about swinging and talk to you about some of the parties that I'd been to and watch everybody get uncomfortable. And I'm like, yeah, there's a difference between getting drunk and having a weird experience and just purposely diving into stuff because you want to see what's going to happen. But I came up with this bit that was like, I know people don't like to kink shame, and I understand why, but personally, I'm not for every kink out there. And as a matter of fact, some of them are kind of dumb. And some people, you just got to let people know that, like, no, that's stupid. Like, you're painting yourself into a corner that you're never going to get out of. And that was, and then I had a story about a whole roommate and everything. But to expand on that, I've known a couple people with weird kinks that spent the majority of their life alone and single because there was nobody that was ever going to actually fit into that box that they had created for themselves. That thought it was the only thing that they wanted. Um, can you hold on for 1 second?
Sure.
Okay, because I don't actually pay for Zoom, and this thing is about to stop. So I'm going to stop, resend you the link again, and then we can continue. Is that all right?
Yep. Understand.
Okay, cool. 1 second.
Okay.
There we go. Let's see. We got to wait for the audio to connect again, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I can hear you. Okay. All right, so I'm still recording, so I left that one little blank spot so I know where to look at it and actually edit that out. But
Okay.
so we were talking about as far as like the kink shaming. Now, granted, I am not in any community where I actually have to listen to somebody get really upset about that. But the story, one of my friends, and she's a really, really awesome person. I think she's really, really great. Uh, but she has a thing that for a while, I don't know how she is now, but the only guy that she would be remotely interested had to be from like Norway or someplace like that, or Sweden, over 6'4", a specific type, with blue eyes, blonde hair. And by the way, this is when we were living in Arizona. So the odds of actually running into anybody like that is very, 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 very slim. So it was just kind of like, well, I mean, maybe I should have asked her, but I was like, are you happy the way the things have kind of turned out for you? Do you enjoy being single, or do you actually want a companionship or something? Because sometimes kinks also, I feel, could be used as defense mechanisms to keep other people away. You know, I had a friend of mine, a roommate. He was a really, really sweet guy. I don't know if at the time, he would consider himself a transvestite. This is before like the whole trans thing came out, because you don't hear about transvestites anymore. You know what I mean? So I feel like he kind of got sucked into, or kind of absorbed into that as far as the nomenclature goes. But he was also really, really into S&M. All right, and he was also a fursuit wearer. Now, that's fine having all those kinks. The thing is that, he wanted to find a girlfriend. And I'm like, all right, there's not going to be a lot of girls that I know of that are going to be, they might be down with one, maybe two of those things, but all three of those is going to be kind of a tall order. And he's like, well, and there was this one girl that was interested in him, and he was like, yeah, I'm not into girls with curves. I only want, and like the type of girl that he wanted looked like Angelina Jolie.
Okay.
And I'm kind of like, so if you're telling me you want a relationship, you've also told me that that's not true, because you've got a lot of barriers for somebody's going to have to overcome in order to get anywhere close to you. And to think that that somebody owes you that is kind of egotistical. You know what I mean? And
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so it was just kind of weird. So I was trying to, maybe I wanted to get your opinion, or at least your thoughts on this, so that way, because I feel right now that bit is kind of uninformed, and I'm trying to get it, so that way it's like it makes sense from even from a person who isn't involved in like in a community or something like that, where that is the norm, where it still makes sense to them. Because I don't want to make it sound like I'm making fun of people. It's about, life is weird, and sometimes human beings, we do stupid shit, and we do.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I've been rambling. Your thoughts, please.
Well, first, I am not a huge fan of boxes, except as toys for my cats to play in.
Right.
I'm not a fan on boxes. I use as few as possible in like self-describing. I will use the largest container possible.
Yeah.
In terms of things like, my gender identity, my sexuality, my faith, spirituality, any number of things. So I don't want to narrow myself. I don't want to box myself in. to these labels that supposedly define who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So in the case of your friend who is only wants a Nordic man,
Mm-hmm.
a very tall Nordic man, my answer to her would be like, well, it sounds like you need to move to a Nordic country.
Yeah.
If that's what if you really want that, if that's something that you feel you really need, that's a deal breaker for you, then you need to go where that is.
Yeah.
Or what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for failure, and or you're setting yourself up to be incredibly disappointed.
Right. Or it's weird, or it's I feel like, and this is somebody who, coming from myself, who was really good at lying to myself for many, many years until I actually got into recovery and stuff and was able to, like, oh, now I have my own life back again. I'm actually me again. This is awesome, instead of somebody who I didn't really like. But sometimes you have to have those really, really hard conversations with yourself where you're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? For me, it was kind of like, why do you keep insisting on forcing a relationship on girls that just want to be your friend? You know what I mean? And I'm like, why am I doing that? It's like, well, because because I really want this relationship. Why do you want this relationship? Because I need somebody to complete me. Really? Go ahead. Well, how do you feel about you? I'm like, oh, I fucking hate me. I'm like, all right. Why don't we work on that, fuckface? And I'm like, all right, well, you're not making it easier, me. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like kind of it's part of a journey. So in some ways, when people find their community, I understand how happy it is, because I felt really, really happy when I like discovered the swinger community, because I realized I wasn't necessarily a piece of shit. There was a lot of people who felt the same way about intimacy and certain types of sex and stuff like that I did. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it's my people. But at the same time, I saw people that are really sucked into that community, and it was more about the gossip and all that other stuff that was going on with it. I'm like, yeah, that's not for me either. But it's really easy to get lost in those things,
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody talks about that.
At the end of the day, you really have to be okay with yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be, and these are often hard-won battles, is, look in the mirror and say, do I like myself? Do I even like myself? And if I can't say yes,
Mm-hmm.
how can I expect anyone else to like me?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's the other thing that says, well, why couldn't somebody like me? Maybe I'm just my worst critic, and they may know me better than I really know myself in that way, or they see something in me that I don't see in myself. But I think that, like, okay, now I understand kinks. I have some kinks of my own. But I don't let them define who I would be in a relationship with.
Yeah.
Because there may be something better out there that I haven't yet discovered. And just because I like having my hair pulled a certain way, but my partner doesn't do it, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be with my partner.
Yeah.
Because for me, that seems, I don't want to discount anybody's kink, so I don't want to use the word silly, but I think it's
like the level of importance that it really plays in that relationship. It might not be as, like, the only reason that you're even paying attention to it is because it's not something that you have in your life right now. But if you did, would it be that important in, like, the scale of things are in the relationship? Probably not.
Yeah. And then there's also, like, with certain kinks, it's like, if that person that you're looking at and hoping they have the same interests that you do, but they're not displaying those interests, until you actually sit down and have a conversation and be able to be open and be vulnerable and have that conversation with them, you're not going to know. Right. Just because you don't think they're into something doesn't mean they aren't until you actually talk about it. And too many of us are far too afraid of what the other person will say, of being completely rejected, of being told we're freaks, or we're odd, or that's disgusting, or any of those things that would shut us down. We're afraid of that, so we often don't make the advance of open communication with someone. I mean, you may find, the librarian that you think is really cute, but there's no way she'd be into, pegging you.
I assume that all
You have
librarians are into that, but all right, that's just
I'm sorry, did I just fall into a stereotype?
yeah.
You
No,
have
just
that
because the idea
conversation
is of the like girl that's really quiet and everything and seems unassuming, but she's into the weirdest shit possible, and you're like, whoa, okay, like
until you have that conversation, you're not going to know.
yeah. Well, it's kind of weird. Sometimes, like, I mean, young kids barely talk to me unless I go to an open mic, and nobody's introduced themselves this way. They said, "Hey, my name is this. These are my pronouns." And nobody's ever asked me what my pronouns are, and I would just say, just call me Dave. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're gonna try to have sex with me, there's really no reason why you need to know how I identify as any of this stuff right now. It's kind of like. It's like if you just want to be my friend, then none of that shit should really matter. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
it's kind of like, but if you're trying to hook up with me and then you want to know what I'm into and everything, I'm like, we'll see how the evening plays out and I'll let you know exactly what's going on because I believe in courting. All right. I believe in the skill of getting to know somebody and I refuse
Yes.
to tell everybody. I think it's the danger of, I love dating apps back in the day. Like I met my wife on Plenty of Fish. You know what I mean? Because I'm really good at writing emails and I have a personality. But sorry, that's just a little dig at all the other guys who are like, how did you meet somebody? I'm like, it's called having a personality, being interested.
It's probably also the first time you slid into her DMs, you didn't show her a picture of your dick or just say, sup.
So, yeah. There's that too. You know, the thing is, and it's like, yes, guys, it does make me embarrassed to be a guy sometimes, but it also, I will say this, is that occasionally, 1 out of a million, that works, which is the reason why guys keep doing it. You know, they don't want to give up on that. It's like,
Ladies, we need to stop accepting that. Oh my gosh.
you could do that too. I would say that. I think both men and women, because it's a symbiotic relationship, we can help, we can, like, both has the power to change with the other person, how things are perceived and how things are handled. So it's kind of like girls are really materialistic and they only care about money and stuff and guys with money. And I'm like, okay. So you could either make more money or guess what? Stop trying to have sex with girls who feel that way.
Thank you.
Because
Yes.
guess what? This is what happens at certain times of history. It's kind of like 70s feminism really starts taking off. It takes more of a mainstream approach with like all the work that Gloria Steinem did, and you know a lot of artists, you know, like Helen Reddy and stuff. It's in their music and stuff. And guess what? Guys started kind of changing the way that they did because they wanted to attract a particular type of girls. And then I would also argue that sensitive dick didn't work out nearly as well as they thought it was gonna, and then guys broed up afterwards, like in the 80s, you know what I mean? So it's kind of this weird thing where we both kind of affect one another. It's, you know, you got to do it through communication and stuff rather than like force it. But, yeah, shit, I'm sorry, I felt like I got off topic here. But yeah, yeah, well, now I remember. Because of the dating apps now that you could try to figure out like, okay, I think this is somebody that I could definitely hook up with, but can I have a relationship with this person? I'm like, how dare you try to figure that out just by looking at 3 pictures and less of a paragraph? That's not going to work. You have to freaking learn how to have a conversation, how to go and approach somebody, how to talk to, you know, because it's weird. I've seen like it's more obvious, I think, when guys don't know how to talk to a girl, you know. I haven't seen it too often, but I've seen occasionally a girl. This didn't happen to me. It happened to my buddy. This is years ago in New York. And he's like, hey, how you doing? She's like, hi, buy me a drink. And so he stupidly buys her a drink. And she's like, thanks, and just takes it and walks away. And I was kind of like, not that she necessarily owed him, like, as far as like a hand job or anything. I mean, it was only a Long Island. But it's kind of like, all right, she didn't want to talk to you. And apparently, I don't think she wasn't necessarily like a cruel or a bitchy person. It was just kind of like, I think she was just really nervous and like didn't know how to communicate and kind of got herself in a situation. Luckily, John is a nice guy and he would never freaking retaliate or say something bad about somebody like that. But I mean, there's definitely guys that would, you know what I mean? So luckily, I don't know, it was a weird situation that everybody got in, but I'm like,
I don't know. That's man.
You were in Hollywood for a while. You know they're exactly the type of person I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, and I've had friends like that too, but it's just it's
It's weird.
it just really I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I like
Mm,
to believe the best in people. I've been told that I have sometimes I've been too nice
mm,
and have been over generous and stuff like that. And then I got older and I fucking stopped that.
mm.
Um but I still like to believe the best in people until they prove otherwise.
Right.
Um God, all of us. I don't care, man, woman, whatever, not man, woman, non-binary, whatever. We need to do better. And by better, I mean,
I think we need more effort. That's the only thing we could really
more
ask from
effort.
people.
We need to, I think we need to be realistic,
Mm-hmm.
and be kind.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying be a doormat. I'm not saying be a pushover.
Right.
I'm saying that it doesn't hurt you to not reply to that nasty comment you got.
Yeah.
I mean, may hurt your pride a little bit, but that's your pride. Who cares? Sorry, that's me. If someone's talking to you and you don't want to talk to them, buy me a drink would not be my go-to.
Yeah.
My go-to would be, I'm not, thank you for speaking with me, but I'm not interested in having conversation. And I mean, I've been to bars where it's just like someone would try and talk to me and I'm just like, hand up and like, I am not in a space to have a conversation with anyone right now.
Yeah.
I am not what you are seeking.
Which is a really nice way to put it, by the way. I think that's awesome. I'm not in the space to have a conversation with anyone right now because you're not necessarily singling out that person, but at the same time, you're like, yeah, you're part of anybody right now. So that means that no.
Yeah, it's
and
not,
this is my boundary.
Not you.
Yeah.
It's all of humanity right now. Or if I'm in okay, I'm 51 years old. This does not happen to me anymore. Once you hit a certain age, you kind of become invisible. And in some ways it's nice, and in some ways it's annoying. But I can go out with some of my girlfriends and we just want to have a nice time together.
Right.
And I'm usually the oldest one. So I see my younger girlfriends who are in their, mid 30s getting hit on and them being uncomfortable and me saying, tell them you're with your girls. You're not interested in speaking to any man.
Yeah. That way you don't have to play the goalie.
Ladies. Yeah, that's why it's not about him.
Yeah.
It's not about him. It's about his whole sex.
Yeah.
Or I'm here with these three people. I don't want to have conversations with anybody but these three people. Thank you. Have a nice night. And he may call you names. He may, I don't know. I honestly,
there's a lot of things.
I'm sorry. I've been very lucky in a lot of ways. In places like clubs and stuff, I've had people call me names because of my size. Fine, whatever. But I've never actually been grabbed. I've never had anybody throw a drink on me on purpose or push me on purpose or, I've been accidentally elbowed a few times, but that's, crowded club, that happens.
Right.
I've been groped a few times, but they regretted that.
I bet.
But
welcome to the pain. What?
Yeah, it's like you didn't ask for permission. Sorry.
Yeah.
You are not tall enough, and I don't mean in actual inches, to ride this ride.
Yeah.
But I just, in some ways, I think we're all our own worst enemies.
Oh
yeah. And I'm not going to lay the blame all at the feet of the men. I mean, yeah. There's some shitty men out there. There's some shitty women out there too.
Yeah.
People are shitty. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And a lot of them are circumstantially or situationally shitty.
Yeah.
Like they're only crappy in this particular situation, but they're everybody else, they're awesome elsewhere. It's just like, well, just be kind. Oh my God, just be kind to each other. How hard is it?
Strangely enough, I would think one of it, like there was this, there's this late night mic that I know I should do, but even though it's like it starts at 10:30 at night, and because now I'm usually in bed by then, I need to go out and do it because there's stuff that I want to work on, and a lot of it is like seasonal. Where I'm like, you know what, you're gonna have to get. I know we got comfortable in our own different spaces and stuff, but you're gonna have to talk to your racist uncle. I'm sorry, you have to go
Yeah.
back home to Thanksgiving. It's your family. That means something because guess what? Friends come and go, and maybe your family sucks, and I'm really sorry if it does. But guess what? I think what having, even if it's shitty family, and you're still there for them and trying to be the best person without being a doormat, that is a great strengthening tool that would benefit you in other aspects of your life. And I think when people don't have that, like there was this freaking another, I don't know what the situation was, but another psycho in Colorado Springs, there was another mass shooting, which is weird. We still don't have the details on it, so I don't know. And with Colorado, I try not to make too many guesses about the assailant. Like, for example, the last one, there's a lot. It's so weird. Colorado is such a peaceful, beautiful place that I assume the only people that try to fuck it up have never been outside of Colorado, so they think that it's worse. And I'm like, go to Arizona in the summertime and see how bad it sucks to live there. And then go back to Colorado, even the worst parts of Aurora, on the hottest day, and you're like, this isn't so bad. You're right, it isn't. You're living in a really, really nice spot. But there was another shooting, it was about a year or two ago. It was up in Boulder, right? And it was funny. This is the reason why I don't say anything about it until I get like more information about the assailant. But there were so many of my friends were like these fucking cis white males and these fucking all our incels and all this other bullshit. And then they found out that the guy was Persian. And then suddenly everybody shut up. And I was like, that's odd. You know, like you thought you had an open pass to really hate on this person. And as soon as they did, they're like, oh, wait a second. No, never mind. I'm like, no, the guy was still mentally ill. You know, we never talked about that. But the whole thing is that the reason why I bring up that and even the crazy guy in Colorado Springs is that I don't think us having these personalized playlist of reality where I only talk to friends, all of my friends, we all believe the same thing or we all believe the same way. I mean, I don't believe in that's good for anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're really, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We've been so polarized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, politically, socially, it seems like, oh, I'm not going to listen to anything this person says
Mm-hmm.
or these people say.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, then all you're hearing is what's in your echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're hanging out with people basically that think like you and act like you. And that's not real life.
Yeah.
You're not growing. I'm not saying you have to adopt or agree with or, gosh, even respect
Mm-hmm.
the other side or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But being courteous. And to me, okay, I'm a big thing about words. To me, respect and courtesy are two different things. You are not owed respect, you are owed courtesy.
Right.
And when I say owed, I don't mean owed as in like they owe me. It's just
you're a human being.
You're a human being, and this needs to be the way we interact with each other for what we would call a civil society.
Yeah.
But if you don't hear other people's opinions, and this is one of the reasons why I've, try and do as much traveling as possible, is everyone's so different every different place you go.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of things we have in common, but there's all these things that's like, oh, I never thought about that before. That's a really interesting perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm going to have to sit with it for a while to see if it's something that I would want to adopt.
Yeah.
But at least now I've had that experience. Now I know something new. Now I've got another interest I can look into.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us don't do that.
It's
we
a skill.
Stay in our little bubbles. We stay in our little circles. We stay with, the group of people who, we've been with for 10, 20, 30 years, however long it's been.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't think much outside of that particular box. And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice when we do that.
Here's a weird thought, is that I think, and this is me getting on my my pious soapbox. I think our generation, the Generation X, owes it to the younger generations because to explain these things. Where I'm like, listen, we were around before the internet, and we saw the change, the before and the after. It's kind of like when somebody says, "Oh, that person's so racist." I'm like, it's a good thing you weren't around when to see racism before the internet. Because let me tell you something,
Yeah.
that was quite different. That was way more intense and stuff. And like, there's just so many things that I think, and it's so, this isn't a generational thing. This is a human being thing, is that it is really, really easy to forget shit if it's not in our art and in our music and our films and our books and all these other things. Because the only thing, I was thinking about this, and I was like, why did it take so long for humanity to give up slavery? And it still hasn't been 100% because there's still parts of the world that
Yeah.
slavery's still a thing, right? But like, why did it take so long? And I'm like, well, look how far. Like initially, music was only either for the church or for the aristocrats. It took a long time. It's not like everybody had music and stuff and songs to listen to about people's personal like heartaches or whatever. Let's say if the song was political or anything like that, right? So I think it's like when that stuff keeps getting passed in generations, like when you keep hearing Helen Reddy's "I Am Woman," that you're always reminded about that struggle in the 70s, that you hear about this and you're like, oh, this existed. It always did. It wasn't always just like a natural thing. You know what I mean? So I think art has a lot to do with, as far as like the emotional maturity of a civilization, where it's kind of like, well, why are we even considering these people? And I'm like, well, because listen to this story, watch this thing. It's called Roots, or read the book by Alex Haley, and you'll understand why. You know, and they're like, huh, okay, you know what? I never thought about it that way. Wow. And so it's like, that's how you keep these ideas going. But I think if we don't, when we cease to talk about these things, or at least put it in an entertaining way so it doesn't sound like we're being preachy, which is difficult, that those things get forgotten about, you know?
And we actually we're seeing some, God, is this going to be like an NPR show? We're
Why
actually
not?
seeing some of that now in the people who have never heard of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And Holocaust deniers.
Right.
People who are minimizing what the enslaved went through.
Mm-hmm.
Minimizing what the indigenous tribes in the indigenous nations in North America went through.
Mm-hmm.
Minimizing, or what gets me, and this is me standing as high on my soapbox as I can get, and this is what ticks me off. I'm a feminist, and my definition of feminism is probably different from, you ask 10 different feminists their definition, you'll get 13 different answers.
Wait a second. Are you trying to say that women have different ideas?
Yeah, well, there's the dictionary well, just like men have different ideas too. We all have different ideas.
Right.
And I try to avoid stereotypes as much as possible. I'm not always successful, but I try. And my belief is that we all deserve an even playing field.
Yeah.
And some would say, well, that's humanism. And I'm like, well, it would be humanism, except historically, given the circumstances that certain people have had to go through in their lives, the playing field isn't even and won't be even until certain systemic things are addressed.
Right.
Okay. But what I'm hearing is a lot of women, and generally younger women, who are saying that we don't need feminism. Feminism is evil because women have the same rights as men. And I'm like, well, maybe we do now. But, in my lifetime, well, granted, I was a child at the time, but a woman could be fired from a job if she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And now she can't.
Right.
I mean, it still happens, but by law, she can't. Getting things like checking accounts and credit cards and buying a home.
Yeah.
All these things are things that like started happening in the 70s. In the state I live in California. Spousal rape was not a thing. So your husband could rape you, or a wife could rape her husband. And it was legal until 1993, 93, I believe, 93 or 94. So until then, and I mean, I'm like, I was in college at that time. Your spouse could force sex upon you. It would be their right as your spouse.
Yeah. It's bizarre. Like California, they didn't allow interracial marriages, I think, until the 70s. You know what I mean? And
there's still some things on the books in California that are pretty wacky.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, why is this still a thing? This makes zero sense.
Right.
For as progressive as we're supposed to be as a state, I'm like, that's backwards.
Yeah.
Why don't we get rid of that? But I don't. Where were we going with this? Because
we were talking about
got too thin up here on this soapbox.
Nah, we were talking about like feminism and stuff, and then how you get a different meaning for it and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of things I think that like it's also funny because I mean, granted, I'll just tell you where I'm coming at it from this point of view is that I see a lot of young female comics when they're working out their material. Right. So sometimes like during the Me Too, I heard at least 4 different female comics have a flaccid penis bit. And speaking of like how one gender can force the other, can influence the other gender, all the guys who were trying to hook up with these few girls were like, yeah, you totally believe it. Yeah, absolutely. I could agree 100%. Yeah, guys are freaking horrible. You know, and it's just like, yeah. And it's really weird because sometimes I put off a weird vibe. It could be for many other reasons, but I was talking to my wife about this. Is like I don't want to have sex with any of the girls that are in the Denver comedy scene because I think of them as coworkers, and I already made the mistake of having sex with a coworker back when I was in my early 20s. I didn't handle it well, and I ended up being a total fucking asshole for a couple of years, and I never want to do that again. So you know, most of the girls and stuff, I'm granted. If a girl was going to flirt with me, it's because she has some massive daddy issues because I'm like 20 some odd years older than what she is. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. But it's kind of weird where it's like, I want like, you know, I hear like kind of a lot of the same sentiments from a lot of these young girls. You know who I don't hear those sentiments from? A feminist who's in her 40s. Because she's going to have a complete different view about the world because the same thing, like the way I look at the world in my 20s is way different. Like, I would be way more interested or a bit willing to get in a fight in my 20s, right? I'm not going to do that in my 40s because I'm like, I know that I can't fight. This is going to be really bad. You know, I'm sorry, you know, but it's... I don't
want to break a hip. You know, if I fall down, man, what's going to happen?
Yeah, right.
Did you know that I actually did stand up?
Yeah, you told me that you were starting that, and I was really excited. But then I was like, I'm asking way too many questions. I probably should just let her do her thing and then talk to her later. So it's later. How's your experience been?
Well, I took classes in improv and then I took classes in comedy writing. I had an amazing time. I absolutely loved it. I don't know whether I like improv better than stand-up. They're both very different. And
comics have not a very pleasant view of improv comedy. But
and this is what was interesting is that the comedy writing instructor, he said that comics that come from improv backgrounds tend to, you know, be able to meld into, you know, stand-up. But if you come from a stand-up background trying to move into improv, it's more difficult.
Yeah. Actors have an easier time with it.
Because a lot of stand-up comics just don't play well with others in that regard. There's so much in improv. There's so much giving up. I mean, stand-up is pretty ego. You know, it's pretty ego-driven. we've all got pretty healthy egos.
Right. But
improv kind of requires you to drop your ego and be willing to go along with whatever anybody else has presented.
Yeah.
And to do the yes and not shut the other person down when they're starting to do their bit and you're picking up their what they lay down and you're building on that. And it's, you know, a real team effort. So I really enjoyed the team effort. It felt a lot like play.
Yeah.
Stand up felt more like telling my own story.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely benefits of that. And so I actually did stand up a couple times. I haven't done anything lately because I like all writers who have inferiority complexes, I think most of my writing is shite. Um,
Mm.
though I've been told it's not. And but I talked about things that unfortunately most men weren't gonna get. It was pretty women centric. It was pretty perimenopausal women centric, women of a
Mm.
certain age. So in the audience, I had young women in their 20s just kind of look at me going, is that what happens to you when you
Yeah.
get in your 40s? And I looked at a bunch of them and I said, oh, it'll happen to you too.
Yeah.
Just wait. And then I went on a rant a little bit about some of the geeky stuff, the nerdy stuff, and how perimenopause affected me. And I went on this like buying binge of thousands of dollars of, geeky geeky stuff, and was fixated for like 2 months, and then I got over it, and now I've got like $1,500 worth of crap that I don't need.
So now I got 1,000 posters of Nathan Fillion from Japan that for some reason I'm not going to be able to get rid of ever.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
nobody's going to buy it.
It's
You're like, how many Firefly freaking figurines did you need? I'm like, apparently all of them. Shut up.
I have, yeah, but I got those years ago, so I'm a big geek already to begin with. But this was extra,
Right.
and it was actually those 8 weeks were when coming. It was incredibly manic feeling, and it was kind of scary.
Yeah, no, it
And
is.
then when I went through it and realized that it was hormone fluctuation,
Mm.
and I'm on the other side, and I'm like, okay, I've got to find some humor in this.
Yeah.
So when I wrote my piece, there's that part, and I talked about masturbation and stuff like that, which I warned them this was going to be salty, and they put me on like almost last because to make sure there weren't any little kids in the audience, kind of thing.
Sometimes
And I'm
you
like,
got to do that.
okay, I got to get something sexual in there because
Right.
that's just going to be me. Yeah, I need to start going to open mic nights and try and work out some of this material.
Yeah. Because that's the only way that you're going to get through
I need to
it.
write more, something that's going to, because open mic nights, it's almost completely guys and their buddies. And this content, this material will not go over. It won't go over at all.
Well, you
So
can
I wanna
find a
write
way to
something that
make it.
appeals. Huh?
You could find out, like, okay, so this is something that just I learned, and you could take it with a grain of salt and throw it away if you don't care for it. But I had this bit that's been working pretty well about, like, you can't because when I was the oldest guy working in the kitchen at the restaurant that I used to work at before all the stuff with my neck and everything else came around. I was responsible for training, and the whole premise is like you can't train the kids today the way that we were trained, and I start talking about this pizza that came out. It wasn't even in the shape of a circle. It just, and I'm like, it looked like a pizza that got too drunk one night and got the shit beat out of it in the back alley and its wallet stolen, So I look at this pizza that's coming out, and I'm like, hey, and I'm like, in the nicest way possible, I'm like, which one of you jackasses made this pizza that looks like an abortion? And I could actually see, and I knew which kid it was because I saw his eyes start to water up, and he's like, I'm like, all right, I took it too far. I'm sorry. I asked you to make this with a spoodle for the sauce, and it looks like you used a coat hanger. So why? And so at first that joke was really, really pissing off. Like, young kids would not laugh at that at all because they had an asshole trainer that looked a lot like me. Right.
Yeah.
But it took a while for me to kind of work things around in the wording until, like, it's not about this kid fucking up. It's about me being a dickhead. And now I'm like, oh my gosh. And then, because I'm like, now HR standing behind me and that's strike two, And so, like, I'm the one who's getting in trouble. I'm the one who's doing this. And it took a while for it to work that out. So that way, even the young kids would laugh at it. Maybe not as hard as the older Gen Xers would, but at least I got them to kind of laugh at it. So sometimes it's like, and I don't envy you at all because I think in a lot of other professional comics share this opinion. It is way more difficult for women to start out in comedy than it is for men because it is a sausage fest for the most part. It's not a clam bake. Those are is what my wife would say.
Well, and what I'm noticing, because, I watch a lot of, clips on YouTube, a lot of comic specials on Netflix and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been looking at fat women who are doing stand up. And I'm wondering if they get a double whammy, one for being women and two for being fat, because things that fat men can get away with, a lot of times fat women can't.
Hold on 1 second before we go on that, because I got to reset the Zoom one more time. Can you hold on for just 1 second? Sorry.
Okay.
Be right back, because I really want to hear this. 1 second. Okay.
Okay.
So, I think the only one of the, well, it's weird because in comedy there's always exceptions, right? Roseanne Barr is somebody who obviously was a bigger gal, and she came out and said, this is what it's like to be a married woman, and this is what and she just freaking hit these jokes hard, and she didn't give a shit about what anybody thought. And that really, really worked for her. But I've also seen other gals that come up there, like, if they're like really pissed off and angry, I think guys feel like they're pissed off at them. And so it's like, all right, I'm going to shut up, and then, or I'm just going to cross my arms or something. Or if, I've seen, or what was it? Here's another thing. Like, okay, if a pretty girl, like I would say model pretty, goes up and starts talking about how, she's like, just guys are so lame, and you can't find a really decent guy here in this town. And like, hey, genius, do you realize you just rejected every fucking guy inside of that bar?
Yeah.
And you want to know why they don't want to listen to you? It's a little bit like I've had the on the opposite side of that. There was like, I did a lot of fat jokes at this one show that I did. It was at Sushi High, and these things normally land really, really well, but they weren't. It was just like a couple of chuckles, and I'd see some of the guys.
And that's what I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Though. I mean, okay, if you are blessed with sight and you see me, you obviously know I'm fat.
Mm-hmm.
So and I've been watching, and so many of these female comics will say fat jokes about themselves, like self-deprecating humor.
Right.
And I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get I'm not necessarily saying they're an easy laugh, but it seems to be a stereotype that that people laugh at these jokes most of the time. Like they like you said, they don't always land. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to walk up and say, hey, let's talk about the elephant in the room, me, right. And then wait for the laugh. Yeah. I don't want to do that. You already know I'm fat. I'm not going to make jokes about being fat. I might make jokes about things like, screwed up sizing in the plus size clothing industry, because I wear a size this here, and I put on the exact same thing but a different brand over here, and I'm like 6 sizes different. Right. How the hell am I supposed to shop?
Right.
But about my making, I don't know, I'm not big on self-deprecating humor, making fun of myself for laughs.
I usually have to do that, I find, if I'm going to do some type of social commentary. So, like, if there's something that's really kind of fucked up about it, about something, then I have to put myself in that situation so people know that I'm talking about me dealing with the situation instead of me saying, no, you're the fucking problem. You know what I mean? Like,
okay, I see that. Now, I guess I'm thinking more of making fun of myself.
Yes.
As opposed to using myself as a tool to advance talk on a subject.
Yeah, and that's
Does that make sense? There's a difference, I think.
Well, there's a weird thing is like there's times that I've because I want to be like freaking like I've there's this poet named Buddy Wakefield who I think is just amazing. I kind of got dragged to one of these slam poetry readings one night, and I'm glad that I went because I think as an artist you should look to be inspired from as many things as possible, and he definitely inspired me because he would, as he's going through these his poetry, there's these little bits of knowledge or ideas and stuff that just kind of slip out, and when they get inside of your head, everybody's like, like, whoa, I never thought of that. And I'm like, man, I would like to be able to do something like that with my comedy. It's just to be like, hey, if I mentioned something or a joke and you're like, wow, I never thought of it that way. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. The thing is there's times when I thought that I'm being punk rock like Jello Biafra for the Dead Kennedys, but really I was being the lead singer from Stryper, the Christian heavy metal band, because there is a big difference between heavy metal and Christian heavy metal. One of them sucks. And because it was more about the message and the ideology than it was about the music. you know, and that's kind of like sometimes, and I see a lot of comics, they kind of get wrapped up in that, like, especially like in Denver, because Denver's more of a liberal town. So they'll be like, yeah, fuck Trump, fuck this. I'm like, all right, that's all well and good and everything, but you're not really being brave in a bar of people that all fucking believe and think like you, right? When they
Yeah.
go down to Colorado Springs, however, which is a Christian conservative town and a military town, that's a different story. My favorite thing to do is to do an open mic in Colorado Springs and watch some of the Denver comics just eat a bucket of shit.
Oh
Because,
my gosh.
oh, dude, there was this one dude, he was a nice kid. He goes up there, this was at Looney's and stuff, and this is like, I would say about a year ago. He's like, isn't it strange all these fucking idiots who are dying because they don't want the vaccine? Crickets.
Yep.
Crickets, and everybody's just kind of looking like, fuck you, you little entitled shit, you know? And he's like maybe 15, 20 seconds after, he's like, I think I'm too high to do this. I'm just going to go. He was only up there for a minute and he pulled a chute and just freaking jumped. And I was like,
Gosh.
I'm like, I really hope you take this experience and like, go like, yeah, because that's, I don't know what it's like as far as the mic scene in California, but one of the great things about Colorado, and if you were going to take a trip just to work on stand up, this would be a great place to go, because Colorado Springs has a different type of community and sense of humor that Denver does, and that's different from Fort Collins, and that's different from Boulder, and all these places you can just travel up and down I-25 and see. Like, if here's a quick plug, if you went to CO Open Mics, as in Colorado, abbreviated openmics.com, which is a site that I run, that I do all the I set all the open mics up so people can come. Like, if you're coming from out of town, you could see like, holy shit, there's a lot of mics, there's a lot of opportunity to get better, right? But the whole thing is that if you don't put yourself in situations where, like, and it's not always going to work out the best for you because it's comedy, but like, at least then, like, oh, if I'm doing really well in Denver, let me take this up to Boulder, which is really, really, really super liberal. Let me see how it works up there. Okay, it's kind of working up there. Let me go check it where it's like super conservative in Colorado Springs, which, by the way, that audience, they kind of demand that you're dirty. You know what I mean? Like, they want you to be, because it's like, listen, man, I work with a bunch of Christians and stuff. We don't talk about this shit at work. I want to hear something that's crazy. Now, if you went up and say, like, what's the deal with this Jesus jackass? You know what I mean? Like, they'd be like, hey. They were going to get really, really upset at you with that. But it's like, if you're just talking about weird, sexy stuff, you know, they're actually all for that, which is really weird, because I'm like, shouldn't you tell me that I'm a heathen? And like, oh, we wanted to listen to a heathen. That's why we're here. That's why I paid money. So start talking about vaginas, you know, stop talking about politics, you moron. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Yeah, Fort Collins is more like a mix. It's a college town, but that's kind of a mixture. And yeah, Boulder's the only town that's kind of weird.
It's pretty much the same here. I mean, granted, I haven't been all over California, but like San Diego versus, say, Orange County versus LA County, they're three very distinctly different audiences.
That's a good thing.
And yeah, it's absolutely a good thing. I personally probably wouldn't do stand up in Orange County, which is where I grew up.
Why is that?
It would really depend on the club, but a lot of it is I don't think my humor would go over very well, because it is kind of earthy, shall we say, raunchy a little bit.
Well, you never know until you actually get out there, because sometimes it'll surprise you.
I shouldn't make that judgment. I should go and experience it myself. I should go do it. San Diego audiences seem to be pretty forgiving and have a pretty wide latitude of what they find funny. But then again, I've also been to, I went and saw Trevor Noah.
How was that? I'm not a fan of his, but go ahead.
Hated the venue.
Okay.
Absolutely hate the venue. Really enjoyed his performance. But it didn't feel much like stand up. Like, when you go to see those really, really big names that sell out stadiums, it almost seems more like a cross between a TED Talk and a concert. That was kind of the way Margaret Cho was when I saw her in Hawaii. because she was really huge at that time.
Did you see Bill Burr's Red Rocks or his special on Netflix, the last one he put out?
No, I haven't yet.
That one is really good. I would say also another one to check out. It's on YouTube. It's Ari Shafir's latest special. It's just called Jew, and
Okay.
it's the only thing. It's about him because he grew up as an Orthodox Jewish person. He even went to Israel and all this other stuff, and he was kind of like, I don't think I believe in any of this, you know. But he had studied it, and it had been so much of a part of his life and everything. And it's what's so great about that special is like the economy of words that he uses. Like, has anybody told you as far as like, you know, sometimes you got to look at your premise and start trimming the fat. What do I
Yes.
not need in this, you know, and all this other shit. He wanted to put that special out, but the pandemic happened. So he's like, all right, so he put it on all the material on a shelf and worked on other stuff. And then when he came back to it, he's like, all right, I want to do this now. He looked at all of these jokes and he's like, I got way too much fat in these. I got to start trimming it. So he worked it all over again. And then what you see is the finished product. And so like that one, I was like, man, I got to work harder on my jokes and actually put the work in. Because a lot of times I just think of it. I write down a little note. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go up and talk about this because I'm a mixture of writing and improv, you know. But yeah, that was really good. Another one, and I would say, I don't know if this is on Netflix or if it's on Amazon, but Kathleen Madigan is one of my.
Oh, I adore her sometimes,
Oh
not
yeah,
all the time.
she's what's so great about her is she almost does the same thing that Patton Oswalt does, but I mean in a different way. It's not like they're doing the same thing, but it's kind of like premise, punchline, tag, 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 another punchline about the same thing, another tag, a tag, a tag, and you can't catch your breath because you're like trying to keep up with what they're talking about, but you're too busy laughing at the thing that they just said, and you don't want to miss
Yep.
the next thing they're going to say. And because like Kathleen Madigan is fucking great about like, yeah, so we went there, and then I was thinking da 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 da, but then da da da, and it's just it's amazing, you know. Yeah, she's one of my favorites. Maria Bamford is really interesting. I haven't seen any of her new stuff. There's a lot of really, really great female comics out there, but then there's also ones that I'm not necessarily a fan of. The worst is like if my wife comes with me to a show and the female comic goes up, I could see my wife's arms just cross and she's like, I'm going to give her 10 seconds. And if she sounds like every other bullshit fucking female comic, I'm not paying attention. And I'm like, really? Jeez. I'm not even that harsh on female comics. And she's like, it's embarrassing when somebody is not out there. And you know what? And I think this is not because anybody's inherently better or worse, but the thing is that if you're a producer, you've got a shitload of male comics that you can ask to be on your show. There's not a lot of female comics in any scene. So they're going to try to like, as soon as anybody like kind of pops up and let's say they just start and they're kind of funny, they're immediately going to put them onto a showcase. And I'm like, they're not ready for a showcase yet. Not that I don't want them to get paid or to get them to be on a show, but it took me a couple of years before I actually had a decent 5-minute set.
Yeah.
If somebody forced me to go up the first month and a half or 2 months that I started comedy, that's not fair. You know, it's not right to the performer, I don't think.
Well, what I found really interesting is in my classes, almost exclusively, like it was half men, half women.
Oh, really?
And I thought it was going to be mostly men in these classes, and it wasn't.
No.
And I was pleasantly surprised. And yeah, it was pretty neat. We have a hometown comic, and gosh, I think she's in her late 20s now.
What's her name?
Taylor Tomlinson.
Oh yeah, she's been on. I haven't met her, but I've seen her. She's performed at the Fort out here at stuff, and she's got a special on Netflix,
She's from San Diego.
Oh.
Yeah, she's from San Diego, and I loved her special Quarter Life Crisis, and it was because I'm like, okay, I remember what it was like to be 25,
right?
And some of the things are the same, you know, some of the common core things that all mid-20 women generally experience were the same, but then there were so many things that were different because when I was 25, I wasn't dating on an app.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't looking for a date on an app. I didn't have.
I had to stalk a guy if I was interested in him. You know. Do you think it's easy to
Yeah.
find collections of pieces of his hair so that way I can get the voodoo doll to work him so he'll notice me? I mean, I could have just said hi, but what am I? What's come on, like.
Yeah. It's like your places to meet people were like clubs,
Mhm,
church, college if you went to college. I
bars.
guess the random grocery store hookup happens.
There's that,
Uh,
or where you work, which is not a
or
good
where you
idea.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a couple of work boyfriends.
Hmm.
It never really worked out, but no pun intended.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was like you never, you couldn't just punch in an app and create a bio and then, wait for someone to match with you and,
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. So differences, but at the core, still a lot of the same stuff that really resonated. And I'm like, yeah, I remember what that was like. Oh, and looking back now and what I'm seeing, not just with comedy, but with people in general is, and I'm using the words kids, and I don't necessarily mean kids, they're adults. They're so much more savvy than I was at their age. Oh my God. They're almost across the board, at least in my own personal experience, they're more well-rounded.
Yeah.
They have more real life experience. They have more direction and goals and stuff. Now, maybe I just was, around the wrong people when I was in my mid-20s, but
Mhm.
early and mid-20s, but they just, I don't know. They seem to have it. They have a better idea than I did. I mean, when I was in my mid-20s, still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life or what I wanted to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
I'm 51 and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah. I got to ask you, since has any of your adult film work come into your stand up yet?
No, and it never will.
Okay.
I wish it could. I really wish it could.
Why wouldn't
But
you? It's just because you don't want a bunch of guys to take out their phones and start Googling you in the middle of your set, or what?
that's part of it.
Hmm.
Another part is that I keep my lives very separate.
Mm.
So my former adult career is, I mean, it's in this partition over here, and then like very few people in my personal private life even know
Mm.
um that, and some kind of have a vague idea, but they don't really know.
Mm.
And luckily I haven't had any of um my mentor friends come out and say, hey, by the way,
Mm.
I saw you on the internet and
Right.
you were naked.
Yeah.
And then I would have to try and explain that. And
I don't know if it does
yeah.
like, because one of the things is that like, granted, I know you a little bit only from the conversations that we had, right? I don't know you as well as your friends do and everything, but I think that it took a certain amount of like chutzpah and just daring to do that in the first place, And for me, and this is just like I said, an idea. Take it with a grain of salt. And I never have to live in your shoes, so what do I know? But that is such an amazing thing that most people who never got a chance to do it professionally is something that they've done. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, if you could say, yes, I am the same person from those videos and everything, and before you bitches start getting judged, just let me know. I'll just tell you right now, there's more dudes that whacked off to me that are ever going to whack off to you. All right, so just keep your mouth shut. Mama's talking. Let me learn you something. You know what I mean? And you're like,
Well, and it was really funny because it wasn't even on my radar.
really?
To do it, it took one of my best friends telling a photographer who asked me if I'd ever modeled before, basically telling him she's too fat. So my very best friend, fat shamed me in front of this stranger who was interested in me modeling. Now, the nude part had not come into that yet. That happened later. But I mean, she crushed me. She hurt me very. I mean, I'm 51 years old. This happened a very long time ago, and I can still remember how I felt. I remember everything that happened. And it kind of became this, fuck you. how dare you say that about me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to prove you wrong.
Right.
And so that's why I took his card, and that's why I called him.
Mm-hmm.
And that started my career. It was because my best friend said I was too fat to do it.
Did they mean to
And
do that, or was that just something that kind of came out? Or it's like, did you ever talk to them and like, hey, that really fucking hurt me? Or is it just like, you know what? Maybe she was, or they were hurt because they were getting rejected by this photographer or something? Or not that I'm
no,
trying to.
we never talked about it
Mm,
because we didn't.
mm,
I mean, looking back as a teenager, I was pretty cut off emotionally.
mm,
Um, and I wanted so badly for people to like me when I was young
right.
that I wouldn't have those hard conversations. I mean, now
Mm,
she has, in the past few years, has come back around, and I cut her out of my life completely for a variety of reasons, that
right.
being one of them. But she just, there's certain people that just aren't healthy for you, and you
Yeah.
recognize that. You're probably toxic for them. They're toxic for you.
I was
It's
definitely
best
toxic
that
for people. So yeah, I
yeah.
get it.
So I basically ignored her overtures, and some would say I ghosted her, but I knew that if I tried to have the conversation with her about it, it would get turned around and somehow I would get blamed for everything. And I
Right.
did not want to deal with that emotionally. So I was just like, clean break. And
That's
we're
also a
never,
healthy thing to too, is when you realize it's like, listen, this person have the ability to even say sorry or to realize what it is. And I'm I'm not knocking them, but I'm like, it's a legit question. Like it's a good thing that anybody should ask, especially is like, does this person like what I was mentioning to my dad earlier, like there's certain things that they're just certain people aren't equipped to deal with, or certain conversations, they just don't have the skills. It's kind of like, hey, can you rebuild this carburetor? I'm like, I don't know how to do that at all. Like, well,
yeah.
then why can't you talk about it? I'm like, because I don't know how to do it. Why are you asking? You know what I mean? That's kind of what
Yeah.
I was getting
And
at.
in the past, what I know of her, I would say no,
Yeah,
she was not capable.
right.
Now, unless there has been some type of growth that has gone on in the past decade or so, I would still say no,
Yeah.
unless there's been some growing. And honestly,
Some people just don't get it. I
they
get it.
don't. And there comes a time, unfortunately, where you have to protect yourself,
Yeah.
and not just physically, but emotionally, mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to say, does this person add to my life?
Yeah.
Does this person fill my bucket, or do they drain it?
Mm-hmm.
And it had always been, she always drained it. And I probably drained hers too.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not a good combination together. I recognize my faults and my shortcomings, and that I was probably a toxic person. Yeah, I was a pretty toxic person at that time. And I'll admit it. I could be a really good friend, but I could also be a really shitty person.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through a lot of trauma and a lot of therapy and a lot of growth and a lot of recognizing the places I've misstepped and the things that I've done wrong, to come to a decision of like, I don't want that in my life.
Yeah.
So if that is happening in my life, I'm going to step back. I'm going to say, this isn't good for me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a doormat. I'm not going to be your punching bag. I'm not going to be your therapist. I'm not qualified to be your therapist.
Yeah.
You're going to need to find that somewhere else. And I'm not saying I hate you. I'm not even going to say I don't like you. I'm just going to say we aren't a good fit. And I hope the rest of your life is good.
Yeah.
I don't wish you any ill will. I don't know if there's anyone that I've ever come across that I would actively say I wish them ill will.
Yeah. I try not to do that.
I'm not that kind of person anymore.
Yeah. I try, usually if there's somebody who's really pissing me off, I mean, I've trained myself to be like, all right, what is it about them, that a quality about them that I share that I don't like? Because what was it? I actually heard this from Dr. Phil once, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but he was like, the thing I don't like about me is the thing I can't stand about you.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, wow, that makes sense, because I projected a lot of stuff. Like I have a friend of mine, Stacia, who is an old friend of mine from back in AMDA, back in New York. And we were just joking around. I'm like, I don't know if you know this, but I tend to be kind of intense sometimes. And she starts laughing. He's like, you? Geez, because she knew me when I was like fucking super broody actor, fucking like constantly like anger is the one emotion that I'm really, really in touch with. So I'm going to stay in that zone all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and it's like, let's see. I know there's some girls out there that are attracted to guys like this, but apparently none of them were on Manhattan. But so like, I'm like, Jesus, this is really, really bad. But it took a long time to figure out what those boundaries were. And for me, it was about, like, I don't know, I tried to control every aspect of my life, especially other people, you know, and I was I was very manipulative in certain aspects of that. And then eventually, you know, as people get older, they either realize to not talk to people like me, or people like me realize, hey, I really like having friends. I need to treat them better, you know, and not everybody's going to think the way that you think, Dave. I'm like, is there a religion that everybody can agree on? No. Is there a philosophy that everybody can agree on? Nope. There isn't. So why are you expecting everybody to believe the same thing you do? And I'm like, oh, yeah. And, you know, obviously, for somebody who really enjoys performing and gets a lot of joy out of it, I wasted a lot of time focusing on shit that was way out of my control and not focusing on being a better artist. And as somebody like who's the way that my health has changed over the past year, and thinking that, you know, oh, I've got the rest of my life, and then somebody goes, let me tell you exactly, here's an idea what the rest of your life is going to look like. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh shit, I got to do as much. I want to get the most out of every situation. That's why, like, you know, lately I've been catching myself doing this. Every time I get off the phone with somebody, I'm like, love you, bro. Have a great day and stuff. Cause I'm like, I don't want to forget to tell somebody how much I care about them, just in case it's the last conversation. Now, granted, I got a long time before that happens, but, yeah. I mean, I've seen people who have like terminal illnesses and they become really bitter and angry towards the end. And I'm like, I don't want that to be, you know, I want to have as much fun as possible. If I get to be in too much pain, I'm going to start doing a shitload of heroin is what I plan on doing, you know, and just, you know.
My goal, okay, my family is not very long lived, unfortunately. And it's funny because like almost nobody in my family is fat, but they all, you know, they were alcoholics, they were heavy smokers, they were, you know, they had X, Y, and Z, you know, this side of the family has heart disease, this side of the family has cancer. And so, you know, I lost my maternal side of the family pretty much in their early 60s, my paternal family in their early to mid 70s, and I'm 50. So I'm like, on the outside, I'm looking at like, okay, if I'm good, maybe I have 25 years. And like other people are like, what are you talking about? You're going to live to be 100. And I'm like, you're funny. Yeah. You know, I don't think this is the halfway point. I think we're past that. Yeah. But I'm like, okay, so whatever time is left to me, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm going to have as much fun as possible.
Yeah.
I'm going to say yes to the adventures that in the past I may have said no to. Right. No, I don't want to go do that. No, I don't want to go see that. No, I don't want to meet these people. No, I don't. Generally speaking, and it's, you know, it's gauged by, you know, how healthy I am in the moment and how much energy I have. But I'm more inclined to say yes to things and try new things. You know, and just like things like I've started traveling internationally. And oh, that's been a trip. That's wild.
Where'd you go? Where was your last trip? Because I mean, I follow you on Instagram and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's freaking going for it.
This year was Roatan, which is an island off the coast of Honduras.
Okay.
Vancouver, Canada, and Northern Ireland and Ireland. Last year was Mexico and Iceland. And I think next year I think is Portugal. And hopefully somewhere else, but it'll depend.
I know through this podcast, I know a couple of comics in Brighton in the UK. So
okay. I know where Brighton is.
I really, really want to go to the UK because I want to say that I've been able to do comedy on a couple of different continents. You know, I think dude, when I do actually make this happen and I get the money and everything all together for it, I'll let you know. I'm like, all right, Mel, we're going on tour. Come on, let's go. We're going to do our jokes for people who aren't going to get it. Ireland is another place that I wanted to go, but I'm very scared to go there.
I don't know about their about their comedy scene because I didn't go to any comedy shows. Actually spent most of 2 weeks outdoors.
Yeah.
Which surprised people because they thought like I'd be in pubs and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, we went hiking. I hiked 60 miles over 2 weeks.
That's fucking awesome.
Came home going, I'm in pain.
Yeah, I should have spent more time in the pub. It was
a lot of fun, but everyone was so incredibly kind. Just I'm not a fan of the big cities just because I'm not a fan necessarily of big cities in general. I don't like huge crowds that I have to wade through. And I can't stand traffic. But
California's a good place for you to live then. That's awesome.
Okay, so if I have to go up to LA,
yeah,
like I've done like background work on a couple shows and stuff like that, like extra work.
Mm-hmm.
And like call times like 7 a.m. Ugh. I live like 2 hours away from the location. I'll leave my house at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to sit in traffic.
Fair enough.
I will get up there at 5 a.m., be there 2 hours early, hit Starbucks, get a latte, and kick back in my car and play video games on my phone until it's time for me to go into work. That's how much I don't want to sit in traffic.
Sure. No, it's not the comedy scene in Ireland that I'm afraid of. I have a weakness for curvy girls, and if they have a Irish accent, it's like kryptonite to me. Like, I am legit scared because I'm either going to say something really stupid or it's like, heaven forbid, she finds me attractive and she's like, hey, how you doing? You want to go? I'm going to forget things like I'm happily married. All right. And I could say that honestly because I know my wife has the same freaking weakness that I do. Because I had a friend of mine that was on this show. He was from Cork, Ireland. And he was doing comedy out here and also just working and having fun. And he's a very, like, I would say he's probably a 6.5 in Ireland, but he's a dime piece when he comes to the United States because of the accent, right? And he's an attractive dude. So he was on the podcast, and my wife listened to it, and she's like, oh my God, he's got such a beautiful voice, a beautiful accent. And then she texts me back, you didn't tell me he was fucking hot. And I'm like, what? Oh, I forgot the picture that I put up, and he looks he's a very attractive dude. So, Jenny was with me at an open mic and stuff, and I see Kevin Stanton is his name. He comes in, he signs up for the list and stuff, and I'm like, oh, hey, man, we're just on our way. I already went up. And he's like, oh, all right, yeah, have a good night. And then my wife is next to me. I'm like, oh, Kevin, this is my wife. She said she really enjoyed the episode. And then I looked at her eyes. They just kind of started doing like, hi. And I'm like, okay, come on, we got to get going. And so she was just like completely gushing over this dude. So I am afraid that I'm going to go do a set and some girl that looks like Nicola Coughlan or or that type of freaking level of like cute adorableness. And I'm going to be like, oh shit.
I'll be honest. Everybody was so incredibly nice, but I don't think I don't think there was anyone where I was just like, oh my God, you're a dreamboat. But then again, I was talking with like 70-year-old jaunty cab drivers.
Fair enough.
So they're the ones that drive the little cart and the horse to take you around tourist places, or the boat captain who's like weathered and rough, and he's got a voice that could melt butter, but he's just like, oh, you kind of look like my spouse, so I already have that.
Let's put it this way:
like,
when it
look
comes
at my
to
spouse, can you speak in an Irish accent?
Exactly.
I don't even think I noticed. There had to. I can't believe it. And now that I'm thinking about it, I almost don't remember what anybody looks like.
Fair enough. Let's put it this way. I've known this from experience because I don't care what a girl looks like if she has an Irish accent. She could have a lazy eye with a fucking baby's foot growing out the side of her neck from her twin when she were in utero. All right. If I hear that accent, I'm going to be like, let's see how this goes. How's it going? My name's Dave. Wow, it's a beautiful accent you have there. It's a nice foot, by the way, that's growing out of your neck. Hey, what's going on? Like, I'm going to, I will look past that.
To them, we have an accent. We're in their country,
right.
so we have the accent.
Heaven forbid the girl's busty. At that point, I'm just not going to
always pretty wild to me. I'm just like, I have an accent?
Yeah, right.
An accent, like so I grew up in Southern California. I moved to the East Coast for a while. I was in North Carolina and Virginia for several years. I came back to California, and one of my childhood girlfriends was like, oh my God, you've got a Southern accent. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I sound nothing like the people that I lived with for 6 years. And she's like, yeah, you have like a little bit of a Southern drawl. And I'm like, okay, well, a Southern drawl to me is Texas or, like Alabama or Arkansas or something like that. Drawl to me means south.
Yeah.
The mid-Atlantic region, and it's a huge, at least in Virginia, it was huge military. So there were people from everywhere.
Right.
I'm like, have you just not heard me in so long that you just think that I have an accent, but I sound exactly the same?
That could be it.
I'm not 100% certain.
Like my friend Stacia, she's from North Carolina, so she still has that very sweet kind of Southern. It's a mellow accent. But then there was another gal that we went to school with. Her name was Maria Biso. She's from Georgia. That is a hard Southern accent, where she's like, "Hey, how y'all doing, man? What's going on here?" And it took a lot for her to have to drop that accent. When she was, because if you're doing Broadway plays or Shakespeare and everything, there's chances are you're like, to be or not to be. What was the question? I don't give a fuck. So she couldn't really do that. But no, accents are funny, especially like when you go to the UK, because your accent tells you what kind of family you came from, what your education was. It is very, very, very different. So it's kind of like, I'm curious I want to check out Brighton. I want to check out the scene in London. It was really interesting. There was this, can I do this one more time? Reset the Zoom.
Yeah, go ahead.
Next time I have you on this podcast, or you're nice enough to do it, I will make sure to please pay for Zoom so we don't have to do this.
You might have to split this podcast into two.
No, I'll keep it at this. Freaking people listen to 4-hour Rogan things. People listen to podcasts for a long time. There's not a time limit. Okay. What were we talking about? Me being accents. Yeah, I want to go. Okay, so there was these two guys that was on Rogan's podcast, and they had a podcast called Trigonomics, and they are also comedians in the UK. And this one dude was talking about, like, if you have the wrong opinions, you're not going to get booked on all this other stuff, because there's only a few people that are gatekeeping and in charge of, a lot of the shows and everything. And it sounded pretty nefarious, right?
Uh-huh.
But then, like, I wrote this blog where I'm like, it's to sit there and complain about people gatekeeping. There's always been gatekeepers. It's called the people who run the theater. You know, they want stuff they want asses in seats, and they want people to come back, or they want the show to be so good that everybody talks about it and they get even more people to come and watch it. That's what show business is, right? So whether you're like a Jerry Seinfeld who works fairly clean, or Brian Regan who's squeaky clean, or Andrew Dice Clay, there's going to be, as long as there's asses in seats, you're going to get booked, right? So if they're not booking you, there's usually for another reason. So either way, these two guys, one of the comics sounds kind of nice, the other one sounds kind of like a prick. But I'm like, I don't know, because I don't know this guy. But then I'm like, wait a second. He's like, yeah, it's a really small scene in all of the UK. And I'm like, huh. And I'm like, I know two comics in Brighton. Let me hit up Ant McEwen. And I'm like, hey, man, do you know this guy? And so I heard some stories where it's not necessarily like the guy's a villain or anything, but he was like, yeah, he's not the most conversational, chatty person. He kind of comes off like a prick. And I'm like, huh. That's really, really nice, because once you start knowing comics from different scenes and stuff, you're like, oh, wait, do you know this person? And they're like, oh, yeah. Nah. And you can find out pretty quickly about, such and such. But one thing, because I asked you about Bridgerton when we were chatting over our, were you a fan of that show, or Dairy Girls?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I haven't seen Dairy Girls yet. I want to. It's just, there are so many things on my checklist of things to watch that, and the list continually grows.
Right.
I'll watch something and then I'll add 4 more things after I've watched that one thing.
Oh, for a Gen Xer, you will love Dairy Girls, because it's very much about being in the 90s and stuff in London and Derry, and these girls who grow up there. And this is a strange thing. Nicola Coughlan, like I've already mentioned her once before, it's because I'm kind of obsessed with her right now because she's finally playing a character that's of age, so I don't feel like a fucking creep about it. Because Dairy Girl, she plays a 16-year-old girl, and
Yeah.
she is way
But she's
older.
not. She's an adult.
Yeah,
She's an adult.
she's totally an adult, and the reason why she really stood out because, like, if as far as acting techniques and the way she does her breathing and physicality, as well as the subtext and all the other stuff that she does, like, she's a fucking really good actress or actor, depending how you put it. And I was really, really impressed with that. But I'm like, man, this character Claire is so interesting. But I'm like, this is a 16-year-old girl, the character that you're really, really interested in. I'm like, I don't feel good about this. And yeah, my wife is like, yeah, I felt the same way when I watched New Moon because that guy Taylor Lautner was only like 17 or 16 at the time. And I'm like, why do I want to fuck this teenage boy so badly? You know? And I'm like, yeah, it's creepy, right? She's like, yeah, I get it. That's why Jenny and I were a great couple because it's like, it's almost like being married to her. She's not a comic, but she has the sensibilities of a comic. So
Okay.
I could tell her anything and it's not really going to, you know, be like, oh, that's fucking gross. We'll find the humor in it. But I finally got into Bridgerton because I had a kind of a weird, not a good view of the show initially. Because when Jenny watched the first season by herself, and I'm like, this looks like stunt casting to me. I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, it looks like they're casting this just to prove how diverse they could be. And then I was like, after I watched one episode, I'm like, no, these actors are just really that good. And it's like Broadway casting where it's like, they made a rule back in the 70s or 80s where like, it doesn't matter what race you are. If you're right for the part, you're right for the part. So
Yeah.
because that's they had to do. I mean, they kind of got in a situation because they're like, you know, we just realized that there's not a lot of parts for anybody who isn't white, yeah, on Broadway, and they're like, all right, we got to do something about this, and they did. So this show, once I kind of like, because I thought it was really weird, I'm like, why is the Queen of England, you know, of a darker complexion? You know what I mean? And why is there anybody? And I'm like, oh, wait a second, because like in history wise, like shit, I don't think that really existed.
No. It historically that was originally. So I also do like costuming and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I have friends that are purists and they'll costume from, you know, that time period, the Regency time period, which is in the early 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And the costuming is not accurate.
Right.
I mean, the general silhouette of the women's costume is correct, but all of the embellishments, the fabric used, the way the sleeves are constructed, also I could go on and on.
Yeah.
So there are things that are different, very different. If the show had been cast true to history, I don't believe there would be any black characters of the ton, the aristocracy.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
and the fact that they can make me give a shit about rich people is pretty good.
It would be really boring.
Yeah, probably. I would agree. I liked
how they constructed a backstory of how the black aristocracy was created.
Yeah,
and it basically was the King of England fell in love with a black woman and made
like
her his queen.
Right.
And so then everything, you know, land titles, things were, you know, granted because that's how it's done to these other people. And there's even some talk in some of the episodes about how precarious the position could be.
Yeah.
And how they need to be better than. And I'm seeing the similarities between some conversations here in the United States about race relations. And so that really resonated with me. Cause like, you know, I hear people talk about how they don't want to be kicked in the head by, you know, the racism in this nation and stuff like that. But I'm like, this is subtle, you know, this is subtle. And I like how it kind of sneaks in there and kind of puts in that little lesson of,
it's always been about the story
of what's culturally significant.
Yeah.
But I love the show.
Yeah, me too.
I love the acting. I love the character choices. It's funny. It's witty. I love the dialogue. The only thing I had a little bit of a problem with season 1 when, oh God, spoiler alert, everybody.
Right.
When Daphne finds out how babies are made.
Mm-hmm.
And she does, when the Duke tells her, she's riding him, they're in bed together.
Right.
She's riding him, and when he tells her to stop because he refuses to have children, he made an oath to his father
Mm-hmm.
that he'd never have kids, and Elaine would die with him, and so he'd always pulled out.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know realistically that doesn't always work, but
Right.
remember, this is make believe.
Right.
It's movie magic. So he would always pull out of her, but now she knows. So she's riding him to completion. So he has to come inside her, and he's trying to get her off of him.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, this could be considered sexual assault. This could be considered rape.
Yeah.
To a certain extent. And I had a little bit of a hard time with it. But at the same time, I realized, okay, this is the movies. These are things that actually really happen in real life. It is possible for a woman to rape a man. And it could be this exact situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he doesn't want to have kids. She's trying to force him to have kids. How is that different from a man trying to force a woman to have a child?
Yeah.
So
which they never kind of really addressed it. That I mean, it's just the whole thing
exactly.
It's like we just made for this guy to come around, you know. But it's like the reason his reasoning for not wanting to have kids was kind of like that's rooted in hatred that you have for somebody that hasn't been around for quite some time, and that you're gonna let that affect. Like there's certain times like they brush past a part of the story that I wish they would go into, like. Season 2, I haven't finished. There's one more episode, so I'm on like the very last episode of it. But
okay,
you know, like how Daphne, I guess a lot of people said that she does a lot of neck acting, or acting with her neck, just by the way that she swallows and stuff. And I'm just kind of like, oh, she's a good actress. I don't think it was bad. But the guy that plays Anthony, the oldest brother, he's going to this move too much. You know, I'm like, I get it. You have an intense stare, but that doesn't replace subtext. You fuck it, come on. Like there's a big difference. Like if you watch Nicola, you could always tell that she's thinking about something, whether it's good or bad. There's always something that's going on, the way that she's listening and reacting. The actor, I don't know if this is the direction. I would like to think, because he's around so many other great actors, that he wouldn't do this on purpose. But there's a lot of times the only thing he's doing is just having that really intense stare. And I'm like, you got one fucking mode, man. And there's a scene where his mom is trying to talk to him, and it's difficult because he's been the head of the family for so long, and she has to respect him as that, but he's also her first son. And I'm like, there was this obvious freaking moment that they could have had where she says it was like something to the effect, because my mom and I had a similar conversation about what happened after my father died. And my mom said, like, it was unfair that I had to lean on you so much, but I couldn't stand on my own. But I'm still grateful that you were there. But there was a part of your childhood that you lost because you were looking after everybody else. And I'm like, the line of like, I didn't realize that he wasn't that your father wasn't the only person I lost that day. Because, you know, she was pregnant with Hyacinth, and that was a difficult thing. And, you know, it's just kind of like, she didn't realize it. It's like, I got used to you running everything, and I was glad for it. But it's like, he obviously lost a part of his childhood the way that when his father died. The fact that he doesn't believe in love, he doesn't want to have anything to do with it, it's because he's scared. And I'm like, fucking go into that. Talk about that. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird that there's these really good issues.
That would fly in the face, like from a historical context.
Yeah.
The mothers did not talk to their, supposedly.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I wasn't there. I mean, I'm old. I'm not that old.
I'm right behind
mothers
you.
Really. My understanding is that mothers really, at least mothers of a certain class.
Yeah.
Of the upper class, didn't talk to their children about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't talk to their children about that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it wouldn't, you know, and from what I understand, he was so wrapped up in his consequence of being the head of the family from such a young age, that I think that it just made him inflexible to a certain way. So that's why I think Miss Sharma was such a
because they had the same.
good for him because she's so challenging. She challenges him.
And on top of that, she has to deal with. They share that in common, because at one
Yes.
point Miss Sharma has to focus on her mother and her little sister, and it's kind of like, yeah, she has that resentment. They both have that resentment for the rest of the world because like you don't know what I gave up. I'm like, well, you didn't really talk about it, but it's one of the things I like about the Bridgerton family is how much you can tell they truly, truly care about each other, and
Yes.
that's one of those
There
things
is
that's so
there's a
special.
lot of love there.
Yeah. Now this is a joke, by the way, and the only thing that really doesn't make any sense, if there's a lot of African American, or if there's a lot of black guys in the aristocracy, there's no fucking way Penelope isn't married by now. All right, I'm sorry. There's no way that Penelope isn't fucking married by now. She would be the first girl that those guys would be hooking up with, not the last. And
Well, but remember who her mother is,
yeah,
and any man she would not want. I mean, I wonder because I don't know if you know this, but next season is supposed to be Penelope season.
yeah, and I'm really looking forward to it because anything with more
So
Nicola
am I.
Coughlan and those beautiful blue eyes of hers, I can.
So there may be some context that goes on there.
Mhm. I don't know if it's
With
going to end
the-
happy for her. You know what I mean? It's just like she's kind of gotten herself in a situation where, like, if anybody ever really truly finds out, or the queen finds out, like, there's a good chance she can get executed for that shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Well, and there's a part of me that's okay. She's been in love with Colin forever,
right.
and
And
there's a part of me hoping, there's that happily ever after part, romantic part of me that hopes they get together and make a love match, and another part of me that hopes that she says no,
Yeah.
and she ends up being the independent woman that Eloise dreams of being.
Yeah. And that's weird. It's like kind of like
I don't
she's
know.
learned that she's definitely your mother's daughter. I can tell that. You know what I mean? And it's like Eloise right now is kind of like, I mean, I think she's a great character, and I think the actress is fucking brilliant who plays her. I think she's just got an amazing voice, and she's, but like she started doing some stupid teenage shit.
Yeah.
The last couple of episodes, and I'm like, oh, I forgot she's a teenager. Okay, of course.
And that's one of the things that when I talk about it with other people is I love the actress.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily buy that she's a teenager. So when she goes and does something teenager-ish, that reassures me a little bit. But the actress herself is like, isn't she almost 30?
I don't know. I know
she doesn't look 16 to me.
Well, it's weird, but Nicola Coughlan doesn't. She's like in her mid-30s. Isn't that fucking crazy? Like, it's...
Well, there are some... I've seen some actors that just... I'm like, they're how old? Like... I did not, for the life of me, in any way, shape, or form, who is it? There's someone that's almost 40, and I can't remember who it was, but when I found out that they were like 39, I'm like, get out of town. There is no way they're 39. They're like 22.
Well, I did see, there was a close-up. Maybe it's because I have like the type of TV that I have. But yeah, now that you mention it, there was like a close-up of Eloise. And through her makeup, you could see one line of a crow's feet. I'm like, that wouldn't have existed on a teenager at all. So she must be like in her like late 20s and stuff, and really like whiskey. I don't know, but
my whole thing is we accept that the clothing is not correct. We accept that some of the characters are not correct for the period. I'm gonna just accept that she's a teenager.
Yeah, it's just like
I'm willing to suspend my disbelief and just sit and enjoy the show.
Or how the middle brother seems like he's way older than Anthony. He's supposed to be the second.
If I had to be any of the family members in the Bridgerton family, that's who I would be. The artist who goes to all the fun parties. Yes, sign me up.
Does all the drugs and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, me painting nudes. Sure, let me go do that. Me finding out I'm with the modiste as well as the gay man's wife.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Sign me up for that. And then I find out later, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
He's the wild child out of the more adult
Yeah.
Bridgertons. I don't know, are we going to get 8 seasons? One for each child?
I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't want to drag it out too
Because
long because it's like okay, the characters that I'm interested in, obviously Nicola or Penelope. Her mother, I forget the actress's name, but she's been in so much stuff, and she is like the quintessential beauty of like English women. She's got this really strong, stern look about her, but she's got this hourglass figure. But it's not like model. It's weird. She's like she fits in so many different type of categories and stuff. And the fact that she's finding it like there's a start in the idea of that like when her husband dies, his younger brother comes and he's the new guy, but like they're both kind of conniving, and he's like really into her because she's conniving like him. And I'm like, that's interesting. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I don't want to marry your daughter.
Oh, I don't know if you have we gotten to the episode where she tells them what she thinks when they have to leave for America?
I think I saw something about that. That was the last one. She's like, I'm not leaving London, and he was like, there's no royalty in America.
You've seen it.
Yeah,
you've seen it.
But there's something about
she's like she chooses her daughters over him. Basically, she's like, because he's saying, well, the daughters can come later, and she's like, I'm not leaving my girls.
Yeah, because he's still freaking, I don't know, but that whole thing when they're looking like they're getting that close, like, are they going to kiss or not? And she's got that, like, all right, that one gave me a little shivers, but I'm interested in that character. What would be interesting, here's an idea, just if we were going to write fan fiction about this. So what would be a good conflict for Penelope if it came to a relationship? Because Colin has been, the relationship that she has in Colin is imaginary at this point. Yes. Because he does not see her or feel the same way about her, at least at this point. He might change his mind later, but that's kind of like, I don't know, to me that's like, wait, you've had this girl that's been fucking obviously up to her eyebrows of love for you. You could see it coming out of her every time that she looks at you, and you never fucking noticed, right? So it's kind of like, there's got to be somebody else that comes along that maybe she's not necessarily into at first, but the thing is that other person speaks to like the Lady Whistlebound part of her, that fucking really cruel, sharp wit and everything. And it's kind of like, I don't want you to be a perfect little lady. I want you to be the fucking shark that you are. That's the girl that I'm attracted to. The one that fucking knows how to take care of her shit. The one who's independent. The one who's this and stuff. So like having like a contrast of basically between like who does she choose, you know, or does she end up staying by herself or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be interesting.
There has to be a conflict. Mm-hmm. And of course, Lady Whistledown will be part of that conflict. Mm-hmm. And her relationship with Eloise.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
That's fractured right now.
Yeah, that was harsh. But I understand why she had to do it though.
Yeah, that was a hard one. I honestly, I personally don't think Eloise was fair.
Nope. She kept telling her, like, please fucking stop doing this.
but then I think of teenage girls, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, this kind of makes more sense.
Right. I know what I'm doing.
But yeah, exactly.
I've read a pamphlet.
I think there will be the a decision to be made possibly about multiple men. I'm thinking maybe the man that is interested in her.
I don't want him to be freaking super attractive, though. This is the thing, is that
I'm thinking it's going to be someone who's maybe not of their class.
Yeah.
So not one of the ton.
Like a soldier or somebody who was involved as far as the military. So he would have access to that thing, but he wouldn't necessarily be a part of it. You know, he's like, I guess, oh, he's a war hero from over such and such. He'll have great stories to tell. We'll invite him. But he's like maybe missing an arm, or he's got a big scar or something like that. You know, like, that would be really freaking interesting.
I could also see, and they probably wouldn't go in this direction, but Lady Featherington, the other two daughters get married off. Penelope's the only one left. Mm-hmm. And the mother gets basically some Lord Duke, whatever he is, Viscount, who knows mm-hmm. what title he has, wants Penelope, but is already married and is trying to basically barter with Lady Featherington, like restoring their fortunes if he can have Penelope as his mistress. And Penelope has to fight against that. Yeah. Like her mother's basically selling her off. I don't think they'll go in that direction. I don't think Lady Featherington would go that route, but you never know.
I would think would be really interesting would be like Penelope doesn't get anywhere near the attention, which is kind of like it's funny, like the moment you can tell in the first episode when they mentioned Lady Whistledown and she's sitting there reading a book, if you look really carefully, you could see her fucking smiling that she can't hide when people are talking about Lady Featherington, and she's like,
Yeah.
you know, there was a couple of shots that they did where she's got those freaking sinister evil eyes when she's kind of thinking about like, who am I fucking with today? And I'm like,
Yep.
that's freaking great because that's like a completely different side of her. And they kind of show her bits and pieces of her being strong, but it's something that she kind of has to hide in the same way that like that's what she has in common with her mother. Because her mother's a freaking strong, crafty gal. So was Penelope,
Yeah.
but her other two sisters really aren't.
No.
You know,
Well, and there's one storyline that I really hope they don't do, and that's the makeover storyline.
mm,
We come back to season 3. Penelope's lost a bunch of weight,
right,
suddenly has new hair, new clothes, and all of a sudden the men are all over her.
right.
I don't want to see that.
No, neither do I. Because it's kind of like it's. How was it? Okay, there's not to put anybody's sexuality in question, but there's a certain types of stories that gay men are really not good at telling. And sometimes it's kind of like how actual heterosexual relationships work sometimes. Because they're like, oh, okay, once she gets a new dress and a new thing and she loses 10 pounds, then guys will be interested. I'm like, no, that's not. There's a lot of guys that would be interested, or they're either probably too scared to go and talk to. There's a whole bunch of. There are so many reasons other than the way somebody looks. Okay, like, that's not the truth. There's like freaking like John Augustine, who's also gay. He's an amazing screenwriter. So I'm not saying that all but sometimes where you can kind of tell like that line was not written by a straight man. Like it's like, it's kind of like if I was trying to write a story about lesbians with love, it would not sound right at all. You know what I mean? Like because
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a lesbian. You know what I mean? So, but I think if or that if they try to force it like another like a weird relationship and stuff like, oh okay, now let's because nobody has come out. Wait, no, the art instructor came out as being gay, but
Yep.
that was kind of a given the moment he said he was an art instructor. So I'm kidding. So
Now, who's delving into stereotypes now?
I'm kidding. The one person who's like, fuck this guy. He's just freaking talking shit now. I don't even give a shit about it. But like, if they say, because that's what like I felt they kind of did that to Claire's character in Dairy Girls, where there wasn't anything that really said that she was gay, but until the episode comes out where she tells all of her friends that she's gay. You know, and it was kind of like, all right, so was that actual part of the story, or was that kind of like we need to have some like quick throw a lesbian in this cast? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the shows that did it the worst to the point where I stopped watching them because I got tired of what I call stunt casting. Was a lot of the stuff that was on the CW. You know, like the Arrowverse and all this other stuff and Legends of Tomorrow and everything. It seems like when it stops being about the story and it's like, hey everybody, look, we've got a gay character. Look, he's right here. All right, we're gonna have him do some gay shit real soon. Don't worry, it's great. I'm like, is this about like superheroes and stuff? I'm like, yes, of course it is. Ooh, we're gonna have a gay version of such and such, you know, and it's just kind of like, is this pertain to the story, or is it just because you really want to throw this element in there? Because sometimes, like it's like I said, Jello Biafra versus Striper. Sometimes if you push something too hard, it kind of ruins it. And not that I think that
True.
everything was ruined. It's just it's kind of like it made me like I only have so much time to watch shows. I'm gonna go watch something else. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I already know how to be diverse. You don't have to fucking teach me. You know what I mean? Like I went to a theater school in New York City. Come on, you know, like I've been
Well,
exposed to this.
unfortunately, not a lot of us, not a lot of people have had our experiences. And like for someone in, I don't know, somewhere where there aren't any like towns that are completely white, or
Right?
towns where everybody's Christian, or towns where
True.
everyone's straight, that may be the only experience they have with someone who's not one of those things.
Right.
And so that might be the only that might be the only point of contact that they have. And that leads in more again
That's
to
true.
my firm belief of getting out and about and meeting more people who don't necessarily look like you, don't necessarily think like
Oh
you.
yeah.
Um,
I just think if you're putting that into it,
sometimes yes, sometimes it is heavy-handed.
yeah. And,
Sometimes the carrot's better than the stick.
mm-hmm.
But I do think that representation matters. I think it's important that we have diverse characters that do serve the story.
Yeah, and I think as an artist, that's the main thing that I would talk about, because it's like, oh, we put this in there. I'm like, yeah, but the way that you did it, how many people actually listened to it and really accepted what it is you were trying to put down? You know what I mean?
And
because
that's a part of it too.
Yeah,
it's like when I sit down and watch, say I'm watching the movie The Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care whose sexuality is what, because it's really not, that's not an issue.
Yeah.
It's not even really, I mean, unless we see Jane and Thor together, which you really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of sexual tension between Black Widow and
anybody.
What is
Bruce Banner. Mark Ruffalo.
Well, Bruce Banner has a thing for her, but she and I keep pounding on my desk. Sorry. Jeremy Renner's character.
I thought that was more of like I didn't think that was more romantic. I think it was a different type of like a camaraderie relationship that they had.
I think for the most part it is, but I still felt, maybe that's just me.
Right.
I felt a little tension.
Well, they definitely love each other. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes, you know what kind of annoys me a little bit, and I'm not trying to freaking gay bash things here, but when I have friends that they try to turn everything, every type of relationship between men and women or men and men into something that's gay. And I'm like, would you fucking stop? Sometimes men just love each other like brothers or as comrades. It doesn't mean they want to fuck each other. And then again, it doesn't mean that they don't. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like two girls could be friends and friggin' hold it. Like, did you ever see The Pope of Greenwich Village?
No.
Okay, it's a movie back then. I think it was like the late 80s or early 90s. Mickey Rourke this is when he was like fucking Mickey Rourke before he turned into Mickey Rourke. You know
I had a crush on him way back when.
Oh, so you'd probably really dig this film, but it's and it was also Eric Roberts was also in it, and it is it's a great performance, especially by Eric Roberts, because this is when Eric Roberts was fucking doing like this amazing fucking acting work, like Star 80, and this was another movie that he did. But these guys are two cousins, and you could tell that they fucking love each other. Not in a romantic way, but it's kind of like in the way that like when they would walk down the street arm in arm, which is really weird unless you're in particular neighborhoods where cousins and family members would actually do that. It was kind of like an old school Italian thing that he did, and it's freaking great. I'm like, they were gay for each other. I'm like, they were cousins. Like, stop trying to turn everything into a freaking gay story. But I get it, because it wasn't any for so long that a lot of times where you're kind of like they had to try to find their stories wherever they could, But it's kind of like, so I kind of get it. But at the same time, we're like, would you stop it? Kid, like freaking Iron Man and Captain America be friends without trying to freaking nail each other with a repulsor beam or a shield, or I don't know. Like,
yes, absolutely. But then there's also the straight dude who is whenever he sees something like that, oh man, they must be gay, and then they get pissed off because two straight men are showing affection to each other. Suddenly that makes them gay, and now they're pissed off.
That would be a funny thing to talk about. I love that. That's a good premise.
I'm like, there's nothing that says you can't have male friendships that are physically affectionate and be straight.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says absolutely, that's absolutely possible. And in countries that are not the United States, in some countries, my understanding is like Italy and Spain, and physical affection between men that is not sexual in nature.
Yeah.
It is normal, is completely normalized.
We keep forgetting that we were raised by Protestants, like a very, very strict Protestant background in the United States.
We have a very puritanical history that we still have in this country, unfortunately.
We've been trying to get rid of it.
when I was, gosh, how old was I? 20, maybe. My mom and I would go places, and my mom and I were, about 20 years apart in age. And, I'd hold her hand as we because, when I was a kid, I'd hold her hand at the grocery store and stuff like that. And, even as a teenager, but when I got, I was holding her hand somewhere and someone gave us the weirdest look. And she saw it and she was visibly uncomfortable and let go of my hand. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And she's just like, yeah, maybe, maybe you're a little, maybe you're a little too old. And I'm like, I am never too old to hold my mama's hand.
Right. Should have jumped on her back. I'm like, all right, you're gonna have to carry me then.
No, I just did things like when we went to the grocery store, I'd start talking about vaginas out loud and embarrass her.
That's funny.
She got embarrassed very easily when I would be like, yeah, Mom, penises are funny. I think vaginas are a lot cuter. I'd say something like that.
Right. And
she'd be like, oh my God, I don't know you. You're not my child. And I'd be, I'd say things like, hey, Mom, do you need an enema? She's like, oh my God, shut up, child. Shut up, child.
That's awesome. Melanie, we've been talking for over 2 hours. So I would keep going for another 2 hours, but at the same time, I'm sure you got things to do. So I'm going to say thank you so much for doing this podcast again.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. I always enjoy talking with you.
I appreciate that. And that's sometimes it's like kind of like I don't want to bug her. You know what I mean? Like there's times where I don't know.
You're not bugging me. If I can't, I can't, and if I can, I can.
Yeah, no.
And it's not a bug. It's sometimes I'm busy and sometimes I'm not.
Fair enough.
Only thing I was going to do this evening is engage in some domestic crafting. I am making Christmas tree ornaments.
Nice. I'm going to guess they're going to be really funny and entertaining or whatever. They're going to be like, here's one that looks like a wing, like what? So
I wish I saw a Christmas tree that had penises and vaginas, vulvas all over it. And the tree was pink and it was interesting. I also saw at a sex store a very large, it looked like a Christmas tree. It was green like a Christmas tree. And it was one of the largest butt plugs I've ever seen in my life.
See, that's what happens when people don't develop personalities.
I wanted to buy it. And then I was going to stick ornaments, use pins instead of Christmas tree hooks. And I was going to stick ornaments in it and I was going to decorate it and set it on my desk.
No, I'm just saying is that if you have a butt plug that's that big, chances are you fucked up at some decision somewhere back where it's like, why am I need to use this?
So I'm just like, maybe not.
Yeah. Top of that, I'm like, this thing is going to how am I going to wash this? I can't put it even in the dishwasher. It's going to smell weird. And you know what? I'm going to stop talking right now. I'm going to say thanks once again. And signing off for the DisJointed podcast, I'm Dave.
I'm Melanie Anton.
And don't forget to, if you want, you can follow her on Instagram, right? It's Melanie Anton BBW.
Yes, it is.
Okay. There it is, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.